Here is a video that is new to this channel where I review every episode of a classic Cartoon Network show. This video will be ranking every episode of the original Powerpuff Girls show. The movie, pilots prior to the series, and the reboot will not be included in this video. Special thanks goes to Ellis Smart for the inspiration, as this was inspired by his video where he ranked every SpongeBob SquarePants episode ever. Episodes of this show from each season will be ranked from best to worst after each season is reviewed. With that being said, here we go. Starting from the very first episode of the series. People could argue that the first episode of the Powerpuff Girls that aired on TV was Insect Inside. However, that was actually episode 3, which aired a week later. These episodes were featured first on the complete series DVD box set, but they are not the first episodes according to this archive of featured episodes from the Cartoon Network website back in 2000. Anyways, this episode stars the original series with the introduction of Mojo Jojo, who steals an Anubis stock head from the museum, as well as the jewels at night while people are sleeping. This leads to an investigation from the girls around the museum, which later becomes obvious that a glass case was broken to steal a jewel. When the girls rescue a dog from a hard car, they realize everyone turned into dogs when the mayor and his assistants start becoming dogs. Mojo Jojo uses the powers from the dog head to turn everyone in town and the world, including the narrator, into dogs. At this point, Mojo Jojo feels unstoppable at this point and would make the human dogs obey him, including the Powerpuff Girls later being turned to dogs when they confront Mojo Jojo after he steals all the jewels. However, the powers never go away completely as the Powerpuff Girls find a plan to outsmart Mojo Jojo despite being dogs when Buttercup gets Mojo Jojo from the other side, making him break the head, and Mojo Jojo gets turned into a dog. This episode is going on the top of the list. Before we go over and rank this episode, I would like to say that the title of this episode is a play on Mommy Dearest. We start off with the Powerpuff Girls being taken straight into bed, and after that happens, the professor feels lonely because he is not in a relationship. This is when he is at a grocery store, where the Powerpuff Girls bombard him with what cereal they want, and falls in love with someone he runs into while shopping. She introduces herself as I'm a good lady, and the girls set up a date with the professor. They help dress up the professor for the occasion, but you gotta wonder what Buttercup was putting into his pocket. All of the others make sense. The professor comes back with his date after the mayor babysits the girls. This is when she makes the girls clean everything themselves, with no powers after cleaning up the house with their powers. I'm a good lady becomes more strict with the girls and makes them not do what they like. When they come back home after fighting crime, Ima grounds them for what she thought was them sneaking out, and even the professor agrees with her without knowing what really happened. The girls figure out she is really seductive, knowing she stole jewels from the mayor. Luckily, the professor finds out what really happened and doesn't believe her lies, and she goes to jail at the end, believing the girls over-seduce her. The episode ends with someone coming over to the professor's house with a pie, so the love story doesn't end after all. So far, this episode is going on the bottom of the list. In this episode, Bubbles has a fear of roaches and she tries to run away while Buttercup tries to kill the roach. This ends when the professor catches the roach and gives a history lesson on the roach and why it is useless to kill roaches despite all the times that roaches have been killed. This is where we get introduced to the villain in this episode, known as Roach Coach, who lives in a rundown apartment and has an army of roaches by his side. Roach Coach has a huge hatred for the human race and uses the Powerpuff Girls' hatred for roaches as a chance to take a shot against them. The next day, roaches take over the town and infect everyone. When the girls get called, Bubbles doesn't take the whole thing seriously and hangs up on them a few times before Blossom takes the call and goes downtown. Buttercup wants to kill them, but Blossom has the idea to put all the cockroaches in a giant jar. This is where the Roach Coach uses the whistle to free the roaches and becomes one with the roaches until the girls decide to destroy the entire giant roach because of what it is on the inside. Turns out the Roach Coach happens to be a roach inside a human body. This episode is ranked above Mommy Dearest. We are introduced to 3 criminals who try to rob a bank and a jewelry store, but they get foiled by the girls both times, until they take the mayor and Miss Bellum hostage, which also ends up failing too as things end flawlessly. While in jail, the criminals hatch up an idea of wanting to be like the Powerpuff Girls, and they end up finding costumes with them conveniently being placed in their cell. Despite being tall men, they end up fooling the prison guard into being the Powerpuff Girls through their costumes. Everyone seems to be stupid enough to believe they are the Powerpuff Girls and successfully rob a bank and rob the jewelry store despite being grown men. It's surprising when even the mayor himself is fooled into thinking they are the girls. The only person who isn't fooled is Miss Bellum, who is the mayor's assistant, but the mayor falsely gets the real Powerpuff Girls arrested. This leads to a fight sequence between the imposters and the original trio at a Chinese food restaurant, and a real blowout happens, which leads to the three criminals being in jail for good. However, since the Powerpuff Girls escaped from prison after being told who the people are, the girls have to serve out the rest of their sentence despite being in there for no reason over a mistake. This episode is not that great and is a poor attempt at being funny, with the only good thing being the fight sequence other than a Dexter's Laboratory cameo in the episode. The episode is being ranked under Mommy Fearless right at the bottom of the list. Bubbles' doll plays a major role in this episode. This is also where we get introduced to the devil of the series, known as him. He has an echo-like voice, knowing the fact that he is a demon.
You didn't destroy them at all, did you? How could you let the Powerpuff Girls humiliate you so completely?
Bubbles gets upset when Blossom and Buttercup fight, so him gets an idea to give a voice to Bubbles' doll, Octi. He takes advantage of Bubbles by giving Octi the power to manipulate Bubbles. It's really freaky how he gets the power to make the toy feel like a real imaginary friend to Bubbles by her ideas for her sisters. This doesn't change the fact that Blossom and Buttercup still fight with each other, so Octi reveals himself to be him the whole time and turns Octi into a monster destroying the town. When Bubbles gets trapped after trying to reason, this brings Blossom and Buttercup to work together without fighting each other on what they should do. He gets defeated, and the Powerpuff Girls learn that teamwork is the most important. This episode is the first time they try something special by having an original plot with Bubbles' toy octopus Octi. The ranking for this episode is now second on the list, close to the top, right under the first episode. This episode introduces the Amoeba Boys to the series for the first time since the What a Cartoon short Crime 101, making this the first ever appearance overall in the series. Of course, the Amoeba Boys are prophetic excuses for criminals since their idea of crime is literally when they try to convince the girls that they are villains. So they have an idea to stay on the grass near a sign that says keep off the grass. After staying there all night in the rain, they get sick and later spread their sickness to other people. The girls try to save the people who were infected when Buttercup scares the Amoeba Boys away, and then the girls and the rest of the characters get sick. The professor tells the girls to find the Amoeba Boys as them being the cause is the route to find a cure. They eventually meet up and fight together, but very slowly because they are sick. As the Amoeba Boys are put in the quarantine, the professor uses them as an antidote, and everyone is cured of the sickness. Not the best episode, but not the worst so far this season. Going above Mommy Fearless. Here we have the first appearance of the Gang Green Gang in this series. They are mainly gangsters who like to mess with people because they can. When the Gang Green Gang runs into the Powerpuff Girls, they pretend to act all innocent, and that's where Buttercup has a crush on the gang leader Ace. She makes the girls forgive them the first time, but for some reason the next time at the museum, Buttercup feels sorry for them because of her affection, which leads to her sneaking out of the house to meet them at their hideout. This gives us a side of Buttercup we never knew about her, as she decides to have fun with a bunch of gangsters, which is different from her character. Ace tries to convince the other gang members that Buttercup is not their friend, and because she is a powerful girl, they want to use her to take control of the town. The gang decides to prank call the girls and trick them into thinking Buttercup is in trouble until Buttercup tears down the wall in accident, figuring out that her sisters are in trouble. This leads to the gangsters being beaten up and a nosebleed Ace. Buttercup then learns that the gangster life is not that great after all. This is another great and well thought episode with trying new plots. Going at the top of the list. Fuzzy Lumpkins makes his first appearance in the series after the What a Cartoon short Meet Fuzzy Lumpkins. He is a redneck who lives out in the country, secluded and away from everyone, and would shoot anything that gets onto his property. Fuzzy Lumpkins tries to take a nap when a squirrel gets onto his property and chases the squirrel into town. This is when he gets hit by a truck and goes insane at anyone he comes into contact with, destroying property in the long run. A rampage is already caused once the Powerpuff Girls goes downtown, and people can't describe who or what Fuzzy Lumpkins is. Bubbles then encounters a squirrel and reveals that she can talk to squirrels as the squirrel lets her know who Fuzzy Lumpkins is. When the girls confront Fuzzy, he gets mad about them on their property, which is where the squirrel and the girls take away the banjo. Buttercup then destroys the banjo by smashing it on him, and Fuzzy goes to jail for his rampage where his banjo is taken away in the end. This episode is going under Kashoon Fight. Nighttime falls in Townsville, and the girls argue about going to bed until Buttercup scares Bubbles with her tale of the boogeyman. After the professor gives them a talk after checking up on them, they go to bed. A transition underneath the Powerpuff Girls' bed shows a glimpse of the boogeyman's nightclub where he hatches a plan to cut off all the power, later sending the monsters out, and would later end the plan by setting a disco ball to eclipse the morning sun. The racket from the party happening in town would wake the Powerpuff Girls up, and they would head to the party where they would face off against the monsters, leading to a meetup with the boogeyman, and they would head to space where we have a Star Wars inspired scene for the falling action where the boogeyman would be taken out, as well as the ball causing the sun to shine and all the nocturnal monsters going away. The episode is very unique for a terror-like episode while also paying tribute to Star Wars. Going above Octi Evil. The Powerpuff Girls and the mayor pay a visit to the old Magic Theater, where he tells the story of his experiences watching magic shows at the theater as a little kid before tearing the old theater down. While tearing the theater down, a zombie of the old magician emerges from the casket he died in. The girls watch a horror movie where Bubbles gets scared of zombies, which is where we continue with the dead magician playing magic tricks on the entire town. We go back to the girls watching a horror movie where they get a call into action on what is happening in the town. The girls are scared to go at first, but they reluctantly have to anyway. The girls try to convince him to stop what he is doing when the zombie remembers the girl he got onto stage because Blossom managed to look like her, in the process hypnotizing Blossom. They would get magic tricks performed on them by the dead magician by putting Blossom into the same trick as the girl he thought was the same person as her. Turns out the zombie was actually Blossom, and she manages to reverse the magic tricks. So far, this is the most eerie episode of the series and the second terror-related episode. Going under Monkey See, Doggy Do. The gang Green Gang make their second appearance in this episode. In this episode, they do prank phone calls, but not to alert anyone or call for help like the last Gang Green Gang episode of Butter Crush. They prank call random numbers, beginning the episode with the narrator being pranked.
Excuse me. Hello?
Yeah, listen, jerkface, you good-for-nothing toad.
You can't talk to me like that.
How about this? I think you stink. I can smell you over the phone.
Why, I oughta. Who is this?
One of the numbers they prank call is the professor, where one of them tells him he won $10 million and he falls for it. After doing their calls, they prank call the mayor's office, where one of the gangsters pretends to be the mayor's secretary, Miss Bellum, and the mayor falls for it, and they take over the office. While the gang Green Gang are in the mayor's office, they prank call the Powerpuff Girls with the hotline on several occasions by tricking them into thinking the other villains are doing bad things. This leads to the villains being pissed off, and rightfully so, calling each other to discuss what has happened to them, and then they call the mayor's office where Big Billy of the Gang Green Gang reveals they have been prank calling them, leading to the gangsters getting a beating from the villains, and the girls not knowing it is the actual mayor calling them, and the professor manages to still say on the phone, not knowing he was prank called. This is also the first time the girls aren't credited for saving the day at the end. This episode is going above Gashoon Fight. A montage of the Powerpuff Girls showing the great things they do for Townsville begins the episode. This angered the villain him as he hatches a plan to try and trick the Powerpuff Girls by making everyone and everything rude. You gotta love that Simpsons reference in the show when Bubbles gets a paper ball thrown at her. Even the mayor and the narrator are affected by the curse, including the professor. The villain reveals he is the one behind this as he eerily licks the professor's head like a popsicle, and he gets the entire town to turn against the girls, which causes them to fight back against their own people. The girls would have to explain to them why they put their own people in the hospital, and all is forgiven. This episode is decent at best, but not the best episode with him in the series, going under Fuzzy Logic. Townsville is on fire and a cold breeze saves the town. This is where we get introduced to a new hero, Major Man. He gets all the spotlight over the Powerpuff Girls, with his superpowers being more stronger than the girls themselves. The girls get a call from the mayor, relieving the girls from their duties and having the town embracing Major Man as a new superhero. This is sad for the girls because they were special and looked up to. Turns out Major Man happens to be someone who creates problems to fix them, not being a real hero. Turns out when a monster attacks Townsville, Major Man can't fight back, which means he is a fraud and not a real hero. Major Man even admits that he faked everything, to the disappointment of the town and giving his duties back to the girls, which he didn't earn in the first place. Major Man is freed and leaves the town, making the girls the heroes of the town once again, and the monster happens to be sent by the girls to prove a point about Major Man.
Coast is clear, Fred. Sorry we had to rough you up so much.
That's okay. I was good, wasn't I? Wasn't I?
You were perfect. No one suspected we set the whole thing up. Thanks.
Oh, anytime, girls. Oh, but next time, girls, not so rough.
The episode just proves what would happen if a different superhero was in the Powerpuff Girls' place, going above Mommy Dearest. The professor ends up in an accident in the lab, which leads the girls to find the letter there from Mojo Jojo.
Dear Powerpuff Girls, I have kidnapped Professor Utonium. I have taken him someplace against his will. If you look for him in the spots he likes to be, you will not find him. He's with me, but not by choice. I took him, and he didn't like it. This message is from and was written by Mojo Jojo.
When the girls find Mojo Jojo keeping the professor hostage, he tells his origin story of how he came to be once the girls were born. The professor feels sorry for Mojo Jojo, which leads him to request for superpowers like the girls. So Mojo Jojo and Professor Utonium work together to build a machine that copies the girls' powers and transfers them to Mojo Jojo so he gets the powers for the first and possibly the only time. So then he uses them to fight against the Powerpuff Girls. Knowing Mojo Jojo has powers, he destroys all the explosives, which gives Professor Utonium flashbacks of what Mojo Jojo did when he was a lab assistant. This reveals that Mojo Jojo accidentally created the girls, which makes everything Mojo Jojo does from before and after worthless, meaning he is worthless as a villain in the series. But at least he is still a good villain, because in this episode, the day is saved by him. Going under Monkey See, Doggy Do. This episode is set at the school that the Powerpuff Girls go to, which happens to be a kindergarten. Elmer's notorious for eating paste, which people make fun of him for. He even eats paste during recess, and a diseased fly contaminates the paste, which gives him paste superpowers where he is a paste monster, in which all of this could have been prevented if Buttercup apologized to Elmer, which she does at the end of the episode. I may like Buttercup as a character, but it was very rude of her for what she did in the episode, and I feel sorry for Elmer because he was never taught better and knew better for his age. But I can understand that about him because he is a little kid, and kids do stupid things sometimes for the sake of being kids. Too bad Elmer never went back to his normal self, going above major competition. A heat wave takes over the entire city of Townsville, and this is where we get introduced to Blossom's new superpower after Buttercup makes hot oatmeal. What makes it special is that only Blossom can do that.
So what are you gonna do with it? I know! Make the floor all ice like in Tom and Jerry. That's my favorite.
Bubbles points out a reference to Tom and Jerry and suggests making the floor ice cold with her breath, which she does. Professor Utonium tells Blossom to only use ice breath if she needs to. However, the ice breath power really is needed in this scenario because of the heat wave, and she wants to try and keep the promise, but she makes exceptions with several people that are suffering and turns the whole playground into a winter wonderland. The heat is so hot that the robber's getaway car gets its tires frozen, and Blossom's ice breath makes them go away. Blossom vows to never use her ice breath again until this happens. A meteor comes to the town, and Blossom is convinced to use her ice breath on the meteor, which she does, and this ends the heat wave, and she loses her ice breath for now. This is a good episode because it introduces how special certain powers are for them, going above Buttercrush, right at the top of the list. Bubbles is not seen in the same limelight as her sisters in training because of how cute and innocent her family members see her as. She sneaks out and trains herself on the higher levels to prove how tough she really is. Bubbles uses her powers to an advantage by catching up to get Blossom on Duck Duck Goose, and even takes a dog out of a car and beats the dog up for causing a traffic jam. Bubbles thinks she can handle everything herself, causing her to terrorize people for breaking minor offenses until she gets captured by Mojo Jojo. When Bubbles calls Mojo Jojo names, and Mojo Jojo makes the race stronger, she frees herself and beats him up. This makes her sisters accept her for who she is, and Mojo Jojo gets beaten up again for fighting back. This episode is one of the best episodes of Season 1 because it shows us a side of Bubbles in an amazing way, and Bubbles is not even my favorite of the three Powerpuff Girls. Going under Monkey See, Doggy Do. We get to see Townsville from the mayor's point of view in his office. This is basically a day in the life of the mayor and what he does in his job. A lot of things happen, such as him looking at a law design when Mojo Jojo knocks the mayor out cold, and he gets kidnapped and can't see anything. Mojo Jojo explains his plans to take over Townsville, and the Powerpuff Girls foil his plan and take the mayor back to his office. The Powerpuff Girls tried to explain their side of the story to the mayor since he couldn't see what had happened, but couldn't agree on who told the story with the most truth while also arguing about what happened. However, they couldn't explain to him what was funny, but we found out why at the end of the episode. He happens to be naked, meaning Mojo Jojo took off his clothes. Very interesting episode, especially seeing things from the mayor's point of view, since in past episodes, there weren't a lot of episodes outside the Powerpuff Girls' point of view, which happened most often other than a couple of villains, going above fuzzy logic. The Powerpuff Girls stop the owner of a cat from destroying the city, with Bubbles taking the cat with them. So they ask the professor if they can keep the cat, which the professor lets them, and after a night decides to have the cat at the house, even though he wasn't allowed to have a pet as a kid. Just like the previous owner, the cat hypnotizes Professor Newtonium into obeying every command by building a ray gun just like the one at the beginning. The cat also makes the professor commit crimes as an accomplice until the very end, where he jumps off a building to try and get the cat, only to be saved by the girls. This episode makes cats more evil than the dogs in the show. It makes cats look bad. While this episode is not the worst overall, going under major competition. Fuzzy Lumpkins runs for mayor in Townsville, and he manages to win against the current mayor of the town and series in this episode. This leaves the former mayor to be kicked out and going homeless without a job. When Fuzzy becomes mayor, he makes a lot of changes, such as making the secretary a country girl and calling the girls to help fix his problems, such as chasing a pig and doing child labor like milking and washing his clothes. I feel sorry for the girls because they are not doing what they are supposed to do. So they call the mayor's secretary to spell him when Fuzzy is sleeping, in a plan to get the old mayor back. When the old mayor confronts Fuzzy, he challenges the old mayor to a wrestling match, where at first he doesn't do too good in the fight to get his old job back against the 4 Lumpkin family members, until Fuzzy starts wearing the hat, and this is where the old mayor ends up victorious with a body slam, ending Fuzzy Lumpkin's short term as mayor and giving the old mayor his job back, and things still stay the same for now. This episode proves that people shouldn't be voting like sheep and have to always research who they vote for, going above the bare facts. Mojo Jojo wakes up and decides to get breakfast, but he only has one egg in the fridge. So he goes out to the store to get more eggs since he wants to have 2 eggs for breakfast. But while going to the store, he has to make a trip back since he forgot to get his wallet. And when he goes out the second time, it's crowded in town. So he finally gets to the store and gets his eggs needed for breakfast and sees a headline in the paper of the Powerpuff Girls saving the day. After that, he realizes that their ball ended up in the house while they were playing catch. Mojo Jojo invites the girls in, and while they are at his house, he hides the ball and uses this opportunity to use his weapons on them, specifically his ray. However, he wants the girls to stay still and not move, which fails miserably as they mess around his house and even look at his photo album. At one point, the girls even play hide and seek. So the girls decide to help Mojo Jojo find their ball, which is way different from his main plan, and then his plan fails when the ray zaps him in front of the girls, and he gives the Powerpuff Girls his ball back. Mojo Jojo would then read a headline of him returning the ball to the girls, and he saves the day once again. This episode is a good description of a day in the life of one of the most notorious villains in the series, and deserves a good spot on this list, going above Telephonies. My opinion on this episode might be controversial for most people. Rainbow the Clown is performing at a kid's birthday party when he gets into the street and turns black and white from a bleached truck and becomes the opposite of what he originally was. He then turns the whole town black and white. How no one was able to stop this and let this continue is beyond me. This is where he gets the girls on a school bus where they prevent an accident and find out about the whole town being black and white, and Bubbles goes on a coloring frenzy trying to color everything back and taking every non-black and white thing out. Is it just me, or has Bubbles gone on a rampage all of a sudden? What she is doing is no better than what the clown or mime is doing, and to think even the police are useless against his powers. I guess shooting wouldn't make sense for a show like the Powerpuff Girls. Even Buttercup and Blossom are victims of the curse, and now that everyone's affected, this leads Bubbles to make a song and have a Powerpuff band this episode to bring all the colors back to town. This is the only good part of the episode, which was this song, but it leads to a bad ending where we have injustice for the clown as nothing ends up fair for him. This episode is going on the bottom of the list now, but it's not the worst episode of this season. We just have 2 episodes left of this season. Mojo Jojo tries to take over Townsville with his machines, but fails every time and always ends up back in prison, leading to Mojo coming up with an idea for his antagonist superheroes to the Powerpuff Girls out of armpit hairs, snails, and a puppy dog tail, including toilet water for chemical X while in prison. They call themselves the Rowdy Rough Boys, Brick, Boomer, and Butch, and they break Mojo Jojo as well as themselves out of prison, which is where they catch up with the Powerpuff Girls. The Powerpuff Girls fight off a giant octopus, where the Rowdy Rough Boys start attacking the girls themselves and the fight happens. The boys try out their special moves against the girls and they do the same. This is an epic fight because it shows the girls are not afraid of anyone or anything, especially at their own size. Of course, just like other episodes, a lot of damage is done around the town. However, the girls end up losing to the boys after doing a lot of work to save people and the whole town is disappointed. The girls think they have lost for good when Miss Bellum gives them advice on what little boys' weaknesses are and what they are afraid of. The way that the boys get defeated is by kisses from each of the girls, and they surprisingly have that as a weakness and explode as a result when Mojo Jojo goes back to jail again. This is a great episode and a great introduction to the best villains in the series. Hell, I am even called Brick for crying out loud, as I have named myself and dressed myself after Brick from the Rowdy Rough Boys. This episode is close to the top of the list, going under Eyesore. Would have been on the top if it weren't for the ending, but there will only be a few years or 4 seasons until the boys come back. The next and final episode of Season 1, which is Uh-Oh Dynamo, will be reviewed and will determine the ranking by my friend Casey. So I'll have him take it away.
Look, first off, when the Powerpuff Girls try to take on that blowfish, it was no problem for them, but it was a big problem for the professor somehow. Somehow, he had the audacity to create himself a giant-ass robot to fight off against the same monsters that the Powerpuff Girls can fight off with ease, but Professor Utonium instead just manipulated them into using it's for their own safety. And when they use it to fight that giant blowfish, it destroyed nearly the entire city, probably killing millions of other people in the process. And yet it was all the professor's intention to keep the girls safe. That is no excuse.
So would you say this episode is ranked on the bottom of the list?
Precisely.
Well, that's about it. Now you're going to see the entire ranking of Season 1. Season 1 had mostly great episodes with few ups and downs, but most episodes were a great way to begin this classic Cartoon Network show. Now we move on to Season 2, so let's see what's different and in store. This episode introduces us to a new character who goes to the same school as the Powerpuff Girls. Her name is Princess Morbucks, and right off the bat, on her first day at school, she is spoiled and doesn't want to play with the other kids, using her family's riches as an excuse. At one point, the hamster tries to escape after being hurt by the princess, and the princess is amazed by the powers of the girls and she wants to be a Powerpuff Girl. One reason that proves the princess is spoiled in this episode is that she cries to her dad and throws tantrums when she doesn't get her way and gets money from her dad to get whatever she wants. She's able to get her own suit just to try and join and get powers, and when she tries to help the girls, the crooks get away with what they did thanks to the princess. If the princess wasn't so spoiled, she would at least understand why she can't be a Powerpuff Girl, but she doesn't understand since she gets defeated by the girls after trying to get an advantage with her upgraded suit and gets arrested by the end of the episode. This episode is great because it has a good lesson and morals that being spoiled and having money as well as being rich will not let you get your way, because you won't always get your way, and Boss's speech at the end explains this fully well to the princess. So far, we are in the beginning of this season, so this episode is going on the top of the list. The Gang Green Gang are playing games at the arcade when they get confronted by a truant officer because they are not at school during the day. Unfortunately, despite being older than the girls, they are sent to the school that the Powerpuff Girls go to, which is Pokeoke's kindergarten. The Powerpuff Girls try to tell their teacher that they are gangsters and not good people, but the gangsters manage to convince the teacher to be given a chance. This is when the gang mess with the kids, and the girls want to fight the gangsters, but they can't because they can't find class. After the show and tell where the Green Gang show off their talents, the girls then warn the gangsters have a deadly weapon when it was just a comb, so the girls don't have a good reason to fight them yet. The Powerpuff Girls then get put into timeout after the gangsters terrorize the kids, but since they fought back against the gangsters, they get in trouble and not the gangsters themselves. Finally, the gangsters use dodgeball against the kids, so the teacher lets the girls play dodgeball to fight back since it's outside and not in class. After the games of dodgeball, the gangsters get defeated and the truant officer takes them home and turns his back and gets hit with a dodgeball, which is what you shouldn't do in the dodgeball game. This episode is one of the best Green Gang episodes, but it shows that you should treat people with respect at school, despite the Powerpuff Girls' problems with the gang. Going at the top of the list above the first episode of this season. This episode centers around Lenny Baxter, an obsessive fan who wants to collect everything Powerpuff related in his collection. He goes to a toy store and buys what would be the last thing to add to his list of collectibles. I would say that's the last collectible because Lenny then finds out that his collection is complete and that he has bought everything, which is not far from the truth as his room even speaks for itself. They did go pretty overboard with all the fake products he has for this episode, but that is not enough as he wants more stuff, so he sneaks into the Powerpuff Girls' house and steals their stuff when no one is looking, which is burglary and stalker-like behavior. In the Powerpuff universe, they are collectible since they actually belong to the girls. So then Lenny lures the girls into his house, and they would wind up in his collectibles, which leads the professor to call the mayor for help in finding out who kidnapped them. The mayor calls everyone to the town hall, and to his surprise, Lenny Baxter is not part of the crowd, which is why they suspect him as the person of interest because he is the only one not there. You have got to also love how one of the people the mayor calls out is a fusion between two people who work on the show, which is Gane Tarvakovsky and Craig McCracken, that being the creator and the showrunner.
Goofus McGurk, Gendy McCracken, Chaim Ishkabibble.
This leads an angry mob to go to Lenny's house where the professor has himself and other kids open up Lenny's collectibles just to have him tell the professor where the girls are. After a pep talk is given by the professor, Lenny finally tells them where they are at, and the girls get set free, and Lenny is sent to jail for kidnapping and burglary. This episode makes it clear that there is nothing wrong with being a fan, but you shouldn't go to specific lengths and target the real people that you look up to in the way that Lenny did in this episode. Going under Schoolhouse rocked. We are introduced to the Powerpuff Girls' neighbors, who are a very average family, which are the Smiths. Usually a typical day is average until the day after, where Mr. Smith continues to watch the news on TV, of Mojo Jojo keeping the mayor hostage, and he roots for the villain in this case. He continues working on his costume, and then the next day after that, the girls and the professor are invited for dinner at their house, after Mr. Smith is angry at the outcome of the events. Despite expectations of the dinner being sent to go well, Mr. Smith comes back out in the costume he worked on in this episode, while the girls brag about their crime fighting.
Basically, there's no villain around that could take us.
Oh, really?
He introduces himself as a supervillain, Harold Smith, and this is where the episode gets really interesting. Harold Smith takes the professor hostage at the dinner table while they eat their food, and this is where he has the professor eat a pea in the most chilling way possible. Dessert is served, and everyone has a food fight with pies. This is where the episode ends with Harold getting sent to jail for threatening to melt the professor with a toy gun. However, this is not the last we will see of this family for now. Going at the top of the list. The villains of Townsville prepare to send their gifts to the Powerpuff Girls for their birthday party. When the girls have their birthday party, they first blow the cake away, intending to blow the candles before they finally open the gifts. The first gift happens to be from Mojo Jojo, which happens to be a giant robot. The robot, of course, gets tangled up and defeated before they move on to the next gift. The next gift happens to be a surprise from the princess, which turns out to be a missile and a target which ends up getting rid of in midair. After that, the girls are given voodoo dolls. However, they are not going to work because the Amoeba Boys have the pins necessary for them to work. The last gift turns out to be an oversized piñata with candy inside, so the devil's plan was to give them cavities through the candy. This episode was really great and had a fun spin on the typical birthday party. with an unexpected ending.
And so, once again, the day is saved thanks to the Powerpuff Girls.
Hey, buddy, that's my line.
And the return of Rainbow the Clown. So at least he got free from jail, which is good. Going under Supper Villain. This episode starts with the girls doing hard work for the town, and the people expect them to do all the hard work without knowing they have lives too, and are put under pressure. After a long day, the girls rest on clouds when a monster attacks the city. The people think they are okay and that the girls can help, but they don't feel like it and decide to place an answering machine when the mayor calls them. It may seem like a smart-ass move for the girls to tell the people to do this themselves, but I don't blame them, especially with all the hard work they do on a daily basis. After the people run for their lives, they manage to get the monster tangled up in some power lines. However, the girls try to tell them the solution to get rid of the monster, but the people are too stupid to figure out why. This just proves that the townspeople can solve the problem without the girls. They just need to think straight, and with that, solving the problem the correct way without the help of very little kids with superpowers like the Powerpuff Girls to do all the work. Going above, collect her. Broccoli aliens attack Townsville by leaving some of their own in the crops. All the kids at first don't want to eat the broccoli, and I don't blame them. I like broccoli, but I don't think parents should force their kids to eat foods they don't like, especially vegetables. The broccoli aliens use the power in the broccoli to freeze the adults that have eaten the broccoli, and they start the invasion. The girls try to get rid of the broccoli aliens at first by eating them, which happens to work, but they end up getting full and they don't get defeated just yet. This is when the girls call on the kids of Townsville, and some kids don't want to help. Buttercup decides to be a smartass to one of the kids.
I don't believe her! This is just some kind of trick to get us to eat vegetables!
What? You doubt the word of a Powerpuff? Or maybe you're just scared to eat vegetables. Tell you what, why don't you just run on home to your mama and see if she'll make you a bologna sandwich? Oh, wait. You know what? She can't, because she's been hypnotized by alien invaders. But you don't want to help save her because you don't feel like eating a few vegetables.
I like Buttercup as a character, but just like the episode Pace Makes Waste, she had no right to be mean to the other kids and be like the parents, even if it's the only way to save their parents. The broccoli that was affected by the aliens did have an effect on the parents who ate them after all, so all the kids have to help the girls by eating off the rest of the army, and the parents are free from the curse. This episode sucks because the episode tries to encourage kids who are watching this to eat vegetables, even if they don't like them, and I don't agree with forcing kids to eat foods they don't like just because it's healthy. Going at the bottom of the list. Buttercup gets sturdy after fighting off monsters, but she refuses to take a bath despite repeated attempts to have her go take a bath. The townspeople, including the professor, had enough and made Buttercup leave the town to the point where even the monsters don't want her because of the smell. It's okay to go a while, if not a day, without taking a bath, unless you are really dirty, but Buttercup wasn't happy about taking a bath just once. Despite this, I enjoyed this episode, and it's one of the best Buttercup episodes yet. Going above Birthday Bash. A take on the Sandman is presented in this episode. He travels throughout the world whenever it's nighttime in search of finding people to get to sleep at night. The Sandman thinks he is done for the day when the Powerpuff Girls are awake, and this forces the Sandman to make the girls sleep. While they are dreaming, they come up with a plan to make the Sandman go through the worst nightmare he will ever have. The plan eventually works, and the Sandman stops what he does and only does his job when necessary, and other people can stay awake. It's only the professor that is awake the next morning when the girls are still fast asleep. Going under, stuck, up, and away. Mojo Jojo creates his plan to finally defeat the Powerpuff Girls once and for all. However, he loses his plan and tries to look for the plan. Little does he know the Amoeba Boys actually have the plan. They end up letting the girls know about the plan by total accident. The girls think it is a scavenger hunt, when little do they know it is actually instructions on how to build a machine that affects the girls. After the Amoeba Boys and the girls end up building the machine, the girls end up getting the last part from Mojo, and this is where Mojo Jojo finds out after the boys get the girls involved. Once Mojo tells the girls it is their plan, the girls are aware of something they almost forgot they use. They are trapped in chewing gum, and they eat their way out of the gum. Of course, that gets foiled, and Mojo Jojo lets the girls know that he invents the plan the Amoeba Boys did not. This is not the best Mojo Jojo episode, but it proves one thing, and that is no other villain should try to take another villain's plans without their permission. Going under, Birthday Bash. The Gang Green Gang are doing graffiti throughout the town, and this is where one of the members, Big Billy, is too stupid to know that a train is coming and gets saved by the girls. Big Billy feels sympathy for the girls for saving his life and wants to hang out with them. He hangs out with the girls by helping them out as well as trying to help, but some get away and some get caught. So Big Billy's helping doesn't always do good so much that he gets kicked out for helping the Powerpuff Girls. Big Billy then goes back to the gang where they come up with an idea to get revenge on the girls. He remembers what the girls did for himself, so he saves them by destroying the train. This is not complete without the gang getting what's coming to them. This episode is as good as the Better Gang Green Gang episodes from season 1, going above to Poof to Puff. Mojo Jojo tries to get away from the Powerpuff Girls when Bubbles gets distracted and hit by a building material. This is where Bubbles runs away from home to go to Mojo Jojo's lair. She then takes Mojo Jojo's clothes and ends up becoming the new Mojo Jojo, and this happened to be all from amnesia. The other Powerpuff Girls find out Mojo Jojo is not behind the robot, and Bubbles is the one pretending to be Mojo Jojo because of the amnesia. They decide not to fight against Bubbles as Mojo Jojo, and Mojo Jojo ends up knocking Bubbles out of her amnesia, and she fights back against the evil chimp. This was a very interesting episode, but it ended up going for far too long, but it just doesn't fit too much as an episode. Going above Dream Scheme. The professor is excited about Father's Day, and this is where he spots a set of golf clubs, but the problem is they cost a lot of money. The girls try to do other things close enough to what the professor wants, such as tasks they can do, but they don't work. The Powerpuff Girls then ask the mayor if they can get paid, and they ask for $2,000, which is how much a set of golf clubs cost. But the mayor almost has a breakdown, considering that is a lot of money to pay the girls at their age. Then they clean the town, and this is where Blossom steals the golf clubs since the window was cracked, and she does it when no one is looking. Blossom then ends up presenting the gift to the professor, and he doesn't even question if she paid for it or not, or anything at all, except for the other girls. The professor then takes the golf club set to the golf course, and this happens to be where the mayor and a cop were playing at. So he gets arrested to his shock because he doesn't know they were stolen. Blossom, of course, feels real guilty about what she does when she gets a phone call from the professor and tries to blame Mojo Jojo for this because he broke the windows, but the other girls don't buy what she is doing and ends up getting a confession out of Blossom, and then she gets community service. Blossom did get lucky in this episode, but I know she only did this because she felt sorry for her father, the professor. Because of the plot of this episode, that is why the episode as a whole is not that great, because it treats one of the girls badly, and even Blossom knows better doing what she did, especially since she is the leader of the Powerpuff Girls after all. I can understand people rooting for the villains over the girls in this show, but this was not a good answer to that. Going above beats your greens. The episode starts with the fact that the Powerpuff Girls are always on time when it comes to fighting villains and monsters. Because they work a lot, they end up falling asleep at school. This makes a teacher call in a parent-teacher conference meeting with the professor to set up a bedtime curfew, which is not going to work as the town needs the girls to fight off everything bad that happens in the town. This is where the professor finally figures out from the TV that he forgot to change his clocks back 1 hour because daylight saving time ended, which proves that some people forget to change their clocks and end up becoming early or late due to time change, including that the girls would have had more time before bed because of this. If you ask me, I hate daylight saving time, and I think we should have standard time year-round, and there is nothing good about changing clocks to have extra daylight in the evening as well, because going an hour forward and back caused major problems for the girls, and the only way to help them fight crime was when daylight time ended. The episode credits Founding Father Ben Franklin as the reason why we have daylight time, but I think he only came up with it but not implemented it. Daylight saving time wasn't implemented until World War I. I am ranking this episode above a very special Blossom because this episode is not the worst episode this season, despite the fact that it is very pointless and unnecessary. The princess is thinking of ways to fight back against the Powerpuff Girls, but they don't work good enough until she sees what happened to Mojo Jojo after another attempt at the girls. So then the princess tries to make a deal for an evil plan with Mojo Jojo, and she pays Mojo a lot of money in order to do the plan. Mojo Jojo then makes something like Chemical X so the princess can have powers like the Powerpuff Girls. She then tricks the girls into trying to save her, but they end up falling for a trap. The girls try to fight back, but they are no match for the princess's new powers. All the attempts fail at first. But the princess ends up revealing or letting the girls know of the laser gun that Mojo Jojo has, and this makes Blossom end up saving the other girls from the attack on them by the laser gun. The girls' quick thinking ends up getting both of the enemies defeated, and they both go to jail. However, I think they could both use different jails than normal jails. This is going at the top of the list. The professor spends a lot of time in his lab working on some new experiment. It turns out to be a little furry pet. Its name is Bimo, and since it was genetically engineered in the lab, the professor has to make a promise to the girls to feed the pet once and only once, which doesn't end up well as the girls are just kids and don't know any better in this case. Throughout the episode, you will see that the girls feed the pet way too much in order to show love and affection, and the pet ends up growing tall, but also bigger as well. The girls play hide and seek with Bimo, and little did they know, the pet ends up tearing the whole house down because of the habit of feeding him too much food. Of course, this leads the professor to explain why the pet was only designed to eat only once and such, and then later on, Bimo ends up becoming a monster, eating up the whole town because of his eating habit. Knowing that it's their fault, the girls want to reason with the pet, but they end up getting eaten themselves, and Bubbles has to keep herself safe. But once she's backed into a corner, she tells Bimo how much she loves him in order to try and be friendly, but she also gets eaten because he is a pet. That happens to end up making the pet explode with everyone and such that was devoured, because the pet wasn't made to digest things, and new pets come out of that. Of course, everyone ended up okay. However, the professor comes in to tell everyone who got one of their own new pets that they can only be fed once, and only once, to prevent something like what happened in this episode from happening again. One of the few decent episodes so far. Going under, collect her. Everyone is excited to leave to go to school except for one kid who is sad as he walks to school. I don't blame him because later on, you are not going to be excited to go to school, as most people would not be excited to go at all. The kid's name is Mike, and he ends up being the new kid who has no friends and is sad, so he has an imaginary friend to keep him company. Whenever something happens involving Mike, he always blames it on his imaginary friend and ends up causing Mike to get into trouble. This is when the imaginary friend comes to life and starts doing things that Mike has no control over. When the imaginary friend patches screws with the kid's clothes, a reference to Cartman from South Park is done when Blossom tries to stop the imaginary friend despite being invincible. Did you notice that? So the girls end up creating their own imaginary friend after knowing they can't fight someone like that is invisible unless they fight it with their imagination. This helps them bring the imaginary friend away and teaches a lesson that real friends are the most important. The episode is great because a lot of kids can relate with Mike in some way for the most part. Going under, Birthday Bash. Love is everywhere in Townsville, so much so that one kid wants to give kisses and he scares the others into thinking he is giving them cooties. This even scares the girls to a point where Mojo Jojo gets the idea to have this kid be his sidekick. The girls have a dream where they get taken over by the cooties, and this scars them. Mojo Jojo then uses the cootie kid to get away with many crimes, and this helps scare the girls away. Even Mojo Jojo uses the cootie kid to help others get away with their crimes. But then, when Mojo Jojo thinks he's getting away with it, he traps the cootie kid with the girls, and they realize that getting kisses or cooties is not that bad. The only thing I don't understand is that they could have flown out without getting affected, but then if that happened, the girls could not have done anything. Of course, Mojo Jojo gets defeated with the girls knowing that the cootie kid was not dangerous. Going under Pet Feud. Nothing is happening in the town because it's raining and it's really boring. This makes the girls come up with a play date where they replicate in normal days as they can't do what they usually do since nothing is happening. How they replicate everything they do is really cool and also very funny at the same time. But by the end of the episode, it stops raining and crime comes back when they were already having fun. Funny thing is, the weather is raining right now as I am ranking this episode. Coincidence? I think not. This episode is going on the top of the list. The Smith family returns in this episode as Mr. Smith is free from prison. Turns out his family was waiting and they decided to take revenge on their neighbors, which are the Powerpuff Girls. So the Smiths decided to trash their neighbor's house, and then they used their car to try and get the girls and the professor, which failed as if destroying their house wasn't enough. This is going under the other episode with the Smiths, which is Supper Villain. The Powerpuff Girls feel extremely exhausted after doing a lot of work keeping the town safe. This gives them the idea to make the sibling exactly how they were created, but with many different ingredients. The new addition to the girls happens to be a tall, kind of a big sister-like person to the girls. Bubbles comes up with a name for the new sister, which is Bunny. The girls tell Bunny that her goal as a Powerpuff Girl is to help fight crime. However, she doesn't do the whole thing right and lets the prisoners free while the cops get locked up. But then when the girls are in trouble, Bunny beats up the prisoners, but at a certain price. She explodes due to the way she was made, and because of that, she couldn't last long. Despite her mistakes, I would prefer Bunny as the fourth Powerpuff Girl over the one from the reboot, going above coup de grace. Buttercup always has the motivation to fight anything and kick ass at the same time, but she has a secret, and that is her blanket, which is a true green color just like herself. One time, Buttercup ended up losing her blanket and didn't have the motivation to fight, so Blossom had to use a fake blanket to help her get through. Buttercup is pissed, so she gets upset until the professor comes back with her own blanket. The other girls stare at her, causing her to give the blanket back to the professor. I can relate with this episode because we all have things we fidget on to stay motivated and living in life, and I can especially relate with Buttercup. And this episode is truly one of the better episodes that has a focus on her. Going above, stuck up, up, and away. Buttercup can't wait to be dismissed from school, but before that happens, the teacher writes a college-level math equation on the board, which makes her feel too good to teach kindergarten. The Powerpuff Girls are very happy that they get to go on vacation for the weekend, and they talk about and make fun of the stuff they won't miss at all.
A hotline phone.
Wow! Powerpuff Girls, this is the mayor! Get over here right away! I seem to have accidentally flushed myself down the toilet!
The girls then race throughout the town to get home, and this is where something happens that is very experimental for a show like this. Turns out they managed to speed time and get into the future where Townsville is not the same without the girls in a different reality for the show. A very long time has happened, and turns out when they sped up time, the girls disappeared, the town of course was destroyed, and lots of things have changed. For the girls, this is very eerie as they didn't think this would happen. Turns out him, or the devil, has taken over and won control over the post-apocalyptic town. The citizens trust the girls, so they think the girls have abandoned the town, so they reverse speed back to normal, and they decide not to go on vacation knowing what the town would be like without them. This episode is pretty sad and eerie at the same time, but it's not the worst episode of this whole season. Going above daylight savings. The Powerpuff Girls try some tricks in front of their whole class, and the tricks are really cool. This inspires a group of kids dreaming of wanting to be just like the girls. Unbeknownst to them, Mojo Jojo offers them Chemical X, which is the superpowers to become like the girls, and they enjoy getting the superpowers and use them to their advantage. They each have different powers that the girls have. However, the powers wear off after a while, and the kids have to get more. Mojo Jojo then promises to give them the powers, but only if they destroy the Powerpuff Girls, to which they accept this offer. They then beat up the girls and overpower them to the point where Mojo Jojo reveals who he really is to the kids, and the kids give back the powers to the girls to help them out and get Mojo Jojo back for what he did. This episode is really interesting as it answers the question of what if other people had the same powers as the girls, going under Mojob. There is something off about the mayor's secretary, Miss Bellum, and even sometimes she could do a little too much that is weird for a show like the Powerpuff Girls, if you know what I mean. Turns out Sedusa, a villain not seen since the first season, was pretending to be Miss Bellum, and she tries to keep her hostage, other than using her personality to get away with her crimes. However, Sedusa ends up getting defeated when the fight ends up in the pool and her hair gel is all washed up, which was also how the girls were free and they all shaved their head as a result. Everything gets back to normal where we know what really happened, which I already gave the hint before. Going above, cover up. The Powerpuff Girls send invites to all the girls they know in town to join their summer party. Eventually, Mojo Jojo finds out about the party and comes up with the idea to crash into the party as a girl. The girls think Mojo is up to some tricks to hurt the party, but it turns out some of the things Mojo is doing are harmless. They have lots of fun at the party, like looking at magazines where the writers, such as the creator of the show, are inserted into the show, and of course they have a sleepover by the end until Mojo Jojo gets Antidote X and takes away the Powerpuff Girls' powers, revealing himself to the rest of the party, where everyone else gets revenge on Mojo Jojo for crashing the party on behalf of them. Going under Speed Demon. Season 2 had more good, if not better, episodes than some of Season 1, or the worst from that season. Only 3 episodes were considered the worst from Season 2 compared to Season 1, which had a little bit more bad episodes, which were at least one more, so that's good. But at least so far, both Seasons 1 and 2 were mostly good with some great episodes. So now I move on to Season 3. Let's see where that season goes. The Ministry of Pain comes out of retirement to get back at Townsville after victories by the Powerpuff Girls. Blossom decides not to fight with them because they are elderly and they have to respect elders. I understand Blossom's point, but you shouldn't respect your elders when they do bad things. The only way to stop the Ministry of Pain like before is to have Captain Righteous and Lefty come out of retirement to defeat them. So the girls meet up with them and convince them both to go after the Ministry of Pain again, which ends up backfiring. This accident wouldn't have happened if the girls would have been able to do it without one of them pulling the Elder card. The Powerpuff Girls wake up one morning and Blossom shows off her hairstyle. So the other girls try to groom her hair to the point where a bald spot is revealed. The hairstyle they later give is so funny to Bubbles and Buttercup to the point where they laugh. A big giant Cyclops orb destroys the town, and when the girls confront them, the town, including the orb, laughs at Blossom's hairstyle and she sees herself becoming embarrassed as a result. The professor comforts Blossom after she shows him the hairstyle, and since the other girls are in major trouble, and he helps her be proud of herself even on a bad day. So then Blossom makes the Cyclops orb laugh so much that the orb gets distracted and flown into space. This episode is not complete, however, without Blossom using her laser powers and Bubbles and Buttercup to get even with them and give them a bad hairstyle as well. This was a very silly but fun way to get rid of a monster so far in the show. Going at the top of the list. The professor and the girls move out to a brand new city that is a lot different from what they are used to. They move into a rundown small apartment, which is really disgusting and filthy. When the girls go to school, they get bullied for being the new kid and being different from the others. Once they get home, they confront the professor, who says that he enjoys living in Citiesville, which we all know he is being sarcastic. The girls then introduce themselves to the mayor of the new town, where he declines at first because he already has a phone and has more important things to do. When two people run away from the cops, the girls would destroy the bridge, which was not a good idea since the other town could have taken care of that, and the mayor was not happy about this, and rightfully so, because the bridge would cost a lot of money to repair. The girls also can't use their superpowers and fly anymore, and things get worse after walking home to the point where the professor has had enough, and they finally get to go home. This episode can really be sad, as moving to a new town can be difficult, but this is not the worst episode so far this season. Going above Fallen Arches. The professor has to go to a business meeting and needs to have a babysitter for the Powerpuff Girls. So he calls the mayor, who is busy playing video games, so he calls up the jail for a babysitter, and it's none other than Mojo Jojo, who is babysitting the girls. Mojo Jojo at first wants them to do favors, but the girls aren't having that. At first they are hungry, so Mojo decides to do his hibachi skills, and he does very well as a hibachi chef. Turns out the girls didn't like the food, so they play games with Mojo, and it didn't go too well. Later on, the girls watch TV and they play along and get Mojo involved, which makes you feel bad a little for Mojo, so then he takes him to bed. This is where Mojo tells his story of Napoleon and gets the story wrong, so the girls correct Mojo on everything.
This story's all wrong! Napoleon's 1807 seizure of Portugal and the subsequent rebellion by the Spaniards cost France over 300,000 casualties, untold sums of money, and contributed to the eventual weakening of the Napoleonic Empire. And your analysis on the invasion of Russia is also incorrect. Napoleon's invasion of 1812 resulted in massive casualties of his troops due to starvation and inclement conditions, and ended in a disastrous retreat from Moscow with his army defeated.
Yeah, dummy! And when he returned to France, the allied nations of Europe united against him, which led to his eventual defeat of the Battle of Waterloo on June 18, 1815, whereafter he was exiled to the island of St. Helena, where he died a miserable death from stomach cancer on May 5th, 1821. Stupid!
Mojo Jojo finally gives up and turns himself in, and the girls get away without any punishment. This episode is funny, but can give mixed signals at the same time. Going under the main event. The professor does an experiment where many of the characters end up switching bodies, and the voices being different proves this. The experiment is done via sound waves that go through the whole town. It feels like horror with the characters being in the bodies of different characters and living as them while still being where they are. The professor then explains that this came from an apples to oranges experiment. This works, but with some consequences for the whole town, and now he has to figure out how to reverse this. Of course, crime in Townsville is a lot more complicated since no one knows who is who because of what happened in the experiment. This ends up with the girls in their new bodies visiting other villains with different people's voices while having this horror-esque thing that is really crazy but weird, especially for a show like this. But that is very cool nonetheless. So then they find out the actual people but with the villains' voices committing crimes. The experiments keep changing as the bodies become different until the professor finally finds a solution by the end. At least that's what they thought, but it then has a lasting impact. What a crazy but very rare episode, at least for this show. Going above, town, and out. The Powerpuff Girls try to fight off a giant ant, but Bubble can't see very well. As a result, they go back home where Bubbles has to wear glasses due to her poor eyesight. She later decides she doesn't want to wear the glasses, which end up making things harder as she mistakes something on the building she is at for the girls. Then the other girls find Bubbles, and then she powers through the glasses with her lasers and gets her eyesight back at home when Buttercup reenacts what Bubbles did, causing the laser to hit Bubbles. And after things get solved at the end, Bubbles loses her hearing. This episode proves that you shouldn't think of something different happening as a misfortune, and Bubbles ended up fighting back against her sisters to save her sisters. Overall, this is a great episode, going above child fearing. The girls try to stop crime as usual when they find out that crime became legal in Townsville. Apparently, the princess became the new mayor by overthrowing the other mayor by giving him a room full of Turkish delights which he enjoys. Since the girls don't want to risk getting thrown in jail for stopping crime, everyone is free to break laws in Townsville since the laws are null and void once crime became legal. So that gives the girls an idea to steal from the princess without her knowing since she made crime legal. This leads the princess to force crime to become illegal without knowing that the girls legally stole her stuff, which shows how stupid it is to make crime legal. The girls force the princess to give the town back to the right officials, and then the princess gets her stuff back. This is why kids should not run town by themselves because it would be chaos, which is what this episode shows. Going under fallen arches. This episode centers around a hamster getting shreked and tortured by Mitch, the rebel kid in the class. The teacher picks Mitch to be the caregiver for the hamster Twiggy during the weekend, to which the girls object because he is mean and doesn't treat the hamster right. The teacher gives Mitch a chance, but the girls aren't buying his promise, so they follow him to his house in a trailer park where he lives with his grandma, who doesn't really do anything in the house. At first, it seems like Mitch is torturing the hamster, but then he feeds Twiggy treats, to which the girls leave, but then he tries to shove the thing in his mouth, which makes the girls suspicious when Mitch starts laughing at the hamster's misfortune. Mitch doesn't learn this lesson when the girls come over to the point where they watch him, and he still tries to hurt the hamster, so then Mitch tries to get his way out of that using the no pets excuse when he has snakes as pets, to the point where in the end he flushes the hamster with a firework down the toilet, and Twiggy then gets poisoned by toxic, hazardous waste, making a monster out of the hamster. This is where Mitch tries to outrun Twiggy on a bicycle to the point where the girls try to teach Mitch a lesson. In the end, he has to live like a hamster, running away from Twiggy in a hamster wheel. This is a crazy episode, but it just proves you have to treat pets with respect. Otherwise, you will get what is coming to you. Going under, town and out. Here we have an officer who doesn't accomplish anything for the Townsville police force. He is very lazy and doesn't do anything to help the other officers and just sleeps on the job and eats donuts. One time the police are on the scene of a bank robbery and the cop just sleeps on the job, which means he has no idea what is going on. Later on, Mike gets fired because he contributes nothing of value to the police force. This is when he goes home and watches the news on TV and gets mad because he thinks the Powerpuff Girls are the reason why he lost his job, when that wasn't the main reason. This is when the ex-cop, Mike, gets revenge by luring the girls into the police storage, where they have a lot of stuff from previous crimes in order to get the girls absorbed in acid. Mike gets arrested for almost killing the girls with acid, in which, thanks to the girls' superpowers, they can't be killed by acid, and that is all of the episode. Some people who do not or are not able to do the work should not have certain jobs. Going above, bought, and scold. The city wins a teamwork award for being a nice and very helpful city, as things do run very smoothly. However, things somehow take a turn when a monster attacks the city. The girls do their part to try and get rid of the monster when nothing else works. This is when Bubbles nicely tells the monster to stop destroying the city, and this somehow works.
Excuse me, Mr. Monster? I was wondering if you would be so kind as to stop destroying Townsville. We like our town very, very much, and I would appreciate it if you would just leave. Pretty please with sugar lumps on top?
This episode was strong, but it was a first, and was very surprising when the girls didn't have to defeat a monster, but just instead being nice and understanding, which is what Bubbles did, and that's really neat. Going under, crisscross crisis. This episode is a repeat or a flashback-like episode to the Season 1, Episode 1 episode, which is Monkey See, Doggy Do. Mojo Jojo steals the Fix Anubis head and jewels, but doesn't plan things through for when the Powerpuff Girls come over, as he does the same thing, which is turning everyone into dogs. Mojo Jojo reviews the last time he did something like this, and got protection for his butt, which didn't work too well as the girls still get their advantage, and Mojo Jojo of course gets turned into a dog, after he gets defeated again, and everything gets back to normal once the dog had his history. This episode is basically the same thing as the first episode of Season 1, so there is nothing much different about this one. So I would have the same opinion as that other episode. Going above, town and out. Someone ends up stealing the jewel from the jewelry store and tries to get away from the Powerpuff Girls by stealing a car, swimming away, and stealing a bolt, as well as getting into other shenanigans until he gets away by falling into a cereal factory and ends up dressing up to look like one of the people working there. His stolen jewel ends up in a cereal box, and instead of taking the jewel from the cereal box and getting away with it, he gets distracted and loses the jewel as one of the boxes goes through the conveyor belt. This is where he tries to find the jewel by opening every box of cereal in the grocery store until the professor takes the last one before the guy can get his hands on the last box in the store. So the guy sneaks onto the back of the professor's car to follow him home to see where the cereal ends up. The jewel thief would soon find out that the girls live at his house, and the girls have the cereal box that contains the jewel he stole earlier in the episode. Right here is where we see the show the girls are watching on TV, which also has a commercial made for this episode for the cereal in this show, which is Lucky Captain Rabbit King Nuggets. The commercial is a parody of the Trix commercials, if you could not tell. The thief ends up dressing up as a cereal mascot to try and gain trust from the girls in order to have some cereal and possibly get the jewel back, which ends up backfiring as the girls know the mascot and the commercials too well, to the point where they kick the thief out of their house. So then the thief ends up dressing up as the old lady that walked by him, pretending to be a babysitter for the girls. But however, the girls catch on knowing how weird the costume looks, so then they kick the person out again, thinking it's just another trick to try to get the cereal. Next, the thief dresses up, or tries to dress up, and pretend to be the gardener, and that gets foiled as well. After that, the thief dresses up as a monster to trick the girls, but that fails too. Finally, the thief uses the fake snow trick to dress up as Santa Claus. After many failed attempts to get up on the roof, he tries to get into the chimney, but he's too big to get through. Now he gets the cereal and eats it up to the point where he has a jewel in his mouth, and the shenanigans are over. This is one of the best episodes this season so far. I like how the different types of animation for the show and parody commercial this episode, going above the main event. The Powerpuff Girls are reading comic books, and each of them read their favorite ones. But then they argue about which comic book is better, as well as which of them are better and more deserving of being called superheroes. This is when they decide they need accessories and new outfits, and they go upstairs to make them. The professor answers the phone from the mayor, and a huge emergency is needed for Townsville, but the girls start transforming into their new costumes, and it takes longer than usual for them to get ready. Now it's time for them to get out and introduce themselves in different personas based off the comic books. They become Liberty Bell, Mange, and Harmony Bunny. The worst part is that they can't use their powers, and they have to use the accessory that the hero uses to get there, and they take forever to get downtown. 1 or 2 days to be exact. So the monster tells the girls they don't need to be different, they just need to be themselves. At best, this episode is decent. I like that they were trying something new with the new costumes and such, and some parts were pretty funny, but this episode is on par with other similar episodes such as Uh-Oh Dynamo from Season 1. This episode is not as bad as that episode from Season 1. Going at the bottom of the list. The Powerpuff Girls save the mayor from a monster attacking the city, and as a reward, they get candy. At first, the leader says no, but is pressured to gain one once her sisters get one each. So then the girls find ways to earn more candy by making Mojo Jojo do his evil doings many times to keep earning rewards. These parts are cool at first, but then it turns to fucked up Mojo Jojo torture porn by the end when he has the candy and the girls hurt him to get it back. This is where I feel sorry for Mojo Jojo because he just wants to be left alone, and the girls were really desperate for candy a bit too much, which I can forgive the girls for a bit because they are just kids. This episode is mainly decent, but not too bad or good. There are some good parts until the end, going above Super Zeros. A giant green blob monster attacks the city, but this happens to be during the celebration day for the Powerpuffs. And once the girls destroy the monster and he regenerates back together, the girls transform into a fiery cat to try and burn up the green monster, and this reminds the monster on why he is destroying the town. The monster is looking for a cat that he lost, and so to prevent the city from being destroyed, they look everywhere for the monster's cat. After not being able to find the right cat, Bubbles ends up calling all cats to make it easier for the monster to find his cat. Turns out his cat was on his behind, and the monster now has his cat back. This is a heartwarming episode, especially as someone who's a cat person myself, and this was one of the best ways the girls could tame a monster attacking the city, going above 3 girls and a monster. The mayor of Townsville is tired of calling the girls to help him fight crime and the whole town, and he is tired of all of this. So he destroys his office in a fit of rage after being called out by his maid. So then the mayor and his assistant get onto a hot air balloon to look for crime going on. The mayor uses an extended punching glove to stop crime. This sounds great at first, but the only problem is the mayor is way too angry and later goes too far at his attacks. So by the end, the girls confront him, so the mayor decides to stick to what he does best in the show. This episode proves that criticism is important, but you should not take all criticism too seriously. Going under, candy is dandy. Before we start, I just want to say, for those who don't get the reference, the title is a spoof of Toys R Us, which is a toy store. The Powerpuff Girls wake up one morning to see their room being full of toys, so they mainly play inside. The girls also find out that the professor sleepwalks to get the toys, and they send him to get the toys so they have more to play with, whilst pretending they don't know what is going on at the toy store. This is when the girls follow the professor to the toy store, where they stage a shootout to trick the girls using the toys to teach a lesson, and the girls decide not to take any more toys. The episode represents every kid's dream, but it also comes with consequences when you go far to get certain things. Going under, Bubble Vision. Bubbles ends up collecting animals in order to save them. This starts with 2 little mice and ends up growing to be more. Despite repeated warnings from the professor, Bubbles rescues any animals she gets her hands on. This ends up going straight to the point where they have a whale in the house, and the girls use the lab with ice melted to straight water to house the whale, and then she has to learn to let the animals go. Bubbles really does care for other things, but this proves that when you rescue animals, you have to let them free free and not keep them in your house. Going above town and out. The Green Gang stuff their faces at a convenience store, but of course they don't pay, which makes the girls get involved. So then the girls chase them to a dead end where they zap them to the point where a chemical reaction happens in their bodies. This gets really interesting because the gang ends up gaining superpowers. The gangsters all destroy the town and nearly try to defeat the girls when the chemical reaction that causes the superpower stop and they all have to go to the bathroom. I like this episode because it gives new meaning to villains who mainly cause mischief, but sometimes they add a lot to the show, and this episode is one of them. Going above child fearing. The Powerpuff Girls and their father figure, the professor, are getting ready to enjoy a day off at the beach on a Saturday. However, that gets thwarted when the girls have to do something and they can't be able to enjoy a day off. The girls then sneak in and set things up and mess with the experiment when Professor Utonium isn't looking, and it's kind of funny what the girls can do when they aren't doing anything else. But then things get better when they have a surprise time together and decide to go out and see a movie, which is awesome. However, that gets thwarted too when an unexpected monster attack ruins their time. All of this makes Professor Utonium very lonely because he doesn't get to spend enough time with the girls, so he becomes his own superhero in order to spend time when the girls do their own fighting. That's right, Powerpuff or Power Professor is here to fight with the girls. He helps out doing many tasks and makes the girls' job a lot easier and safer, and this all makes for a really great bond as a father to the girls. This is when at the end, Mojo Jojo kidnaps the girls and Powerpuff has to decide whether to save his girls or beat Mojo Jojo. So he then beats up Mojo Jojo to save his girls, and that was enough for the professor as he realizes how much tougher crime fighting is, so he leaves it back to the girls. I love this episode because this really shows how much of a bond Professor Utonium has with his girls, and that is really nice. Going at the top of the list. A guy who attacks people by leaving a bite mark on people's heads is going around town, mainly at night. When he does this, he is able to steal stuff and get an advantage by not having their victims remember a thing, so he gives them amnesia. The only way he is able to get away is when he attacks people who are witnesses so they don't remember when he gets their information. This is when the girls figure out that the next person who may be attacked is someone who is coming to visit Townsville and has valuable information to tell. However, when the girls get there, they are too late, and the mayor sees everything, which means he may be next. For the next time the head sucker strikes, the girls are there with the mayor to make sure to prevent the mayor from being the next victim. The girls get the idea to make sure the head sucker is sucking on the mayor's head in order to catch and stop the guy from doing what he does ever again. In which the mayor having an empty head was enough to stop the head sucker, but the only consequence is having no memory, and he even made the narrator have no memory too. How that happened, I have no idea. That episode's villain, which was brought here, was one of the best one-episode villains because he had the secret trait some others didn't exactly have. Going under Jewel of the Isle. Everything is great in Townsville, so much so that one woman wants to rob a bank just for a certain kind of coins. Her name is Femme Fatale, and she only robs places just for coins. This is where she tries to escape the girls, and they argue about other female superheroes, and the Powerpuff Girls can't name much. Then she makes her way out by convincing the girls to not let her go to jail so that she can stay the only female villain. Femme Fatale then goes back to stealing Susan B. Anthony coins because a woman is on the coins and not men who are on the money. Now every time the Powerpuff Girls interact, they make sure no one messes with them. The girls decide to let the mayor have a man do the job like Femme Fatale told them because she is a feminist, and this is when the assistant then talks to the girls to meet up with them. The mayor's assistant, Miss Bellum, and their teacher, Miss Keene, then talk about the differences between men and women, but this is when the other women victims come forth and explain what Femme Fatale did to them, so this gives the girls the idea to finally stop her and teach her a lesson. Finally, the Powerpuff Girls teach Femme Fatale a lesson in women's suffrage, and that Susan B. Anthony fought to have women be treated equally, and not just for them to have rights, because she did not have much of an idea who Susan was.
Oh, hello, girls. I didn't expect to see you here. Here you've been kicking some male butt. Good for you. Keep up the good work.
Susan B. Anthony coins, huh?
Do you even know who she was?
She was,
Once upon a time, women weren't allowed to do much of anything.
Susan B. Anthony knew that was wrong. In 1872, she broke the law by voting. And even though she was found guilty, the feds wanted to go easy on her.
Because she was a girl!
And not send her to jail.
Well, you know, she was this, man. Girls should... Oh, man.
Susan B. Anthony didn't want special treatment. She wanted to be treated equally.
She demanded that she be sent to jail just like any man who broke the law. And that's exactly what we're gonna do to you.
This episode proves that just because you are a woman doesn't mean you should be treated differently from doing crimes, and you should get the same kind of punishment as other people. Going above candy is dandy. The girls clean up the entire house. After that, they get paid for their chores, which happens to the point where Buttercup gets excited to save money for a punching bag until she accidentally punches Bubbles to the point where she knocks her tooth out. This gives Buttercup the idea to try and hurt Bubbles to get more teeth out to earn more money from the Tooth Fairy. When she starts knocking teeth out from bad guys, this gives her the idea to collect more money from loose teeth to the point where every villain has to go see the dentist. Then they come together to trap Buttercup and make her lose or ruin her teeth to show her how she likes it, and all her earnings from those teeth go to pay her dental bills. I didn't like how Buttercup was all greedy and impatient in this episode when she could have waited longer to save money, and she got what was coming, but this is far from a good episode. Going above Hot Air Buffoon. The main villains are pissed off that they can't get much done outside of jail. This is when they meet up outside the Powerpuff Girls' house where they argue about who gets to defeat them to the point where Fuzzy Lumpkins helps defeat them with a rock. With that done, the B-Dolls are formed by Mojo Jojo, the Devil, or him, Fuzzy Lumpkins, and Princess. They are a supervillain team that is able to defeat the girls and get away every time they make their next move. This frustrates the professor and the girls, but with encouragement, the girls found their way to break up the B-Dolls by giving Mojo Jojo a new partner with the B-Dolls. And not only did this help break up the B-Dolls, it helped get Mojo Jojo caught and the rest of the team. This episode is awesome and a great way to end Season 3. I also like the references to the Beatles in this episode, especially when these parody events are similar, while this is about a villain group rather than a band. This is going on the top of the list right above Powerpuff. Season 3 was one of the best seasons of the Powerpuff Girls next to Season 1, especially since this season had very great and timeless episodes such as Meet the Beatles, for example. Most episodes ended up being good or on par with episodes from Season 1, especially with one episode Season 3 being a repeat of Season 1 episode, but there were even fewer bad episodes than Seasons 1 and 2. Season 4 is considered the last of the good era of the classic Powerpuff Girls, so let's see how things go from there before we go over Seasons 5 and 6. The Devil or him gives out riddles to solve in a certain amount of time, including fighting and saving things. The professor is taken hostage, and many of the riddles the girls solve include creating tears by creating a water cycle for rain, rushing to answer a payphone without flying, which would give them 3 minutes to split up and find the fastest way from each of them, stopping 2 trains from colliding, and many more. The second to hardest riddles for them was to decide which one is their teacher, which was easy to Blossom to figure out, and even taking the SAT test, which Bubbles ended up getting the answers right by chance. Then the main hardest riddle comes with the girls fighting a monster without using their superpowers. At the end, the girls meet with the professor at the diner where he had to pay because the girls didn't end up finishing on time. It was really interesting seeing how the girls can and can't use their superpowers, despite the episode being a bit lackluster. The episode is going on the top of the list. The Powerpuff Girls are visited by a Hollywood director about a possible movie being filmed about them in their own town. As they get ready to film the movie, the professor feels really let down because of what's going on behind the scenes, especially when the director tells lies and other things about him and the girls on TV and the way he is treating the girls, and the professor was not having it, and rightfully so as a concerned parent. Once the professor finds the director's trailer, he overhears the conversation and finds out that the director is a fraud and he is scamming the city of Townsville. This gives the professor an idea to dress up as a woman, considering they were only looking for a woman in the movie. This is when the professor calls out the director for being a fraud and having no film in the camera to film the movie. After it was revealed that there is no script or anything that would make a movie possible, the director kidnaps the mayor and the girls and the professor go on a wild goose chase. This just proves once again that the professor is a great father who cares about his kids and knows what's best for them. A great episode to complement the release of the actual Powerpuff Girls movie, going at the top of the list. This all starts at recess, where Bubbles draws chalk on the ground, but it is considered so much of a distraction that Buttercup gets upset and destroys Bubbles' chalk, causing her to go cry in the corner. This is when all the animals give her chalk, and the devil or him, as a butterfly, gives her an opportunity to draw out her feelings, causing her to make chalk monsters. Now it is up to Bubbles to fix the chalk monsters, place them back onto the ground where they belong to save her sisters, and this happens when she draws the devil back into a butterfly and fixes the drawings. Then he retreats and all is forgiven. This episode shows Bubbles' true aspirations, as one of her hobbies is being an artist, despite her taking advantage of. Going above him diddle riddle. This all starts on career day at school, where the parents introduce and explain what careers they have for the whole day. This is when Professor Utonium comes up and introduces the class to a time portal, and that's when Mojo Jojo sneaks in to go back in time. But not before he pretends to be another student and asks questions about the portal before he reveals himself. Now the girls have to do their best to find Mojo Jojo and bring him back to the present time. This is when Mojo Jojo finds the professor as a kid and takes him after a science experiment gone wrong and takes him to an active volcano to try to prevent the girls from being born. However, the girls end up stopping Mojo Jojo from making that plan happen and saving his life. Then the professor then has a vision of the girls, and in the present he is so happy they exist and he has created them. Mojo Jojo ended up failing, but this was indeed one of Mojo Jojo's attempts to change time and undo the creation of the girls. Going under Film Flam. The Powerpuff Girls are watching TV when a meeting of superheroes comes together for an important super summit. They come together as the Association of World Supermen. The superheroes come from all over the world, such as England, Japan, the Caribbean, Mexico, and China. This is when the girls are encouraged by their father, the professor, about all the great things they did, and that gets the girls to travel to the summit to meet Major Glory and all the rest of the superheroes they look up to. When the girls meet the superheroes, they get challenged to do many feats, and the girls beat them at about everything, from lifting to super speed and stopping meteors. This is when the girls talk with Major Glory about age, and the girls tell him their dad does all the work and he is a single parent, and rightfully so because the professor created the girls. This is when they get rejected and are forced to go home. That's when the girls find out about a supervillain kicking the crap out of the superheroes, and they are all overpowered, causing the girls to go back and show them that they are not worthless because of their age. This is when Major Glory and others apologize, and Buttercup gives them the benefit of the doubt by being forgiving and not being mean back, and I do agree with that quote from her.
Oh, please! After everything you put us through, you think, now girls, just because they were mean and insensitive doesn't mean we shouldn't turn the other cheek.
This by far is the best episode of the season, and it shows the girls with their real feats and how they could be great superheroes in the show as well as the others in the same episode. Some of which are also the Justice Friends from Dexter's Lab, going at the top of the list. Townsville is a hustling, bustling city as usual, especially since lots of crazy things happen there on a daily basis. That is until an unusual storm comes to town, and it's more than a typical rainstorm. The rain is so bad that everything shrinks when water comes in contact. Professor Utonium looks at the droplet through a microscope, and it turns out a tiny nanobot inside the raindrop chomps down certain things when it lands. After a failed attempt at attacking the nanobots themselves, the professor uses a machine to shrink the girls into size so they can fight the boss easier. But not before the professor takes the tiny girls to town themselves. With their tiny size, fighting tiny bots is as easy as pie. As the professor helps direct traffic, the girls do everything they can to defeat the nanobots and make way for the cloud to get rid of the rainstorm that causes disaster. This is when the nanobots come together to form a megabot, becoming even more powerful. The megabot ends up becoming too powerful for the girls to stop until the professor steps on it and saves the day at the end, concluding the disaster. This was a great episode and maybe the easiest battle the girls ever did in the whole series, even when they are tiny. This was also the first episode of the new art style for the show. Going above, Get Back JoJo. This episode starts in the town's forest on a nice spring day. It's a peaceful time for people to come and enjoy nature and other animals. This is when a squirrel is chasing after its acorn to avoid a hawk trying to steal it. This is when the squirrel gets caught by the hawk, and Bubbles rescues the squirrel from danger. The girls take the squirrel home, and Bubbles is sad because the squirrel is sick. This is when Bubbles gives the squirrel drops of chemical X, and later on the next day, the girls get stuck on flypaper after they arrive at Mojo Jojo's home. This is when the squirrel gets into action and saves the girls from getting themselves killed by an explosion. After saving the girls, the squirrel is honored by them to be the honorary Powerpuff member, which is Powerpuff Bullet. Bullet the squirrel helps out with many tasks that the girls usually do on a regular basis. After a long day of helping the girls, Bullet hears a disturbance in the forest. It turns out the hawk is bothering the forest creatures. A fight goes off, but with the new superpowers, the hawk is no match even when Bullet gets put down many times, and her acorn attack helps her win. However, Bullet gets homesick and decides to stay in the forest and says goodbye to the girls. The episode ends with some scenes from the forest, reenacting a normal episode with Bullet doing her duties like the other girls usually do. This episode is really cool because it was awesome. The girls had a pet that could help them fight crime and be a cool sidekick. Going under members only. Random places just explode out of nowhere. This turns out to be done by an alien spaceship. The girls get overpowered by the ray from the spaceship, so then they try a bomb, which the spaceship ends up trying back on them. After that, the girls try to clone themselves, which the spaceship also does right back. Things seem hopeless until the girls do the unthinkable. They have to turn to Mojo Jojo, one of the main villains, for help. Reluctantly, Mojo Jojo ends up agreeing to the Powerpuff Girls' terms as the aliens end up destroying the town. This is when Mojo Jojo teaches the girls the main steps on being evil to get back at the aliens and to destroy the spaceship. To do this, he gets the girls to steal a stinky piece of cheese as a mammoth is thawed out. That's where the cheese comes in handy to be used on the mammoth. The stench would trigger an army of rats to go after the mammoth and sidetrack the spaceship. Once that happens, the aliens then cause a malfunction shipping, and some kids get a cartridge that would have a missile to launch and aim for the volcano. This would get the spaceship down, only to stand as a tall robot, and it would destroy the whole city to the anger of Mojo Jojo because this was something he wanted to do. A tornado forms, causing a major disaster, and it seems like all is lost. The giant robot ends up destroying everything else until Mojo Jojo fights back against the robot, causing it to fall down. This is when he realized he saved the town and made the aliens go away. This episode is great because it proves that Mojo Jojo can still be evil while being good by still saving his own reputation and even working with his enemies. Going above Nano of the North. This episode introduces the professor's college buddy and roommate Dick Hardley. He comes over to the professor's house, and this is when he discovers the professor's girls, and it gives him an idea to create other clones of the Powerpuff Girls. This is when he picks up the girls from school and tells them the idea he has to have other girls that are superheroes and has to have some chemical X. So then he takes it home to his lab to create copies of the girls and then introduces them to different cities. Funny thing is, the girls are not very lifelike. This is when the girls have to lie to their father about the clones being them. When Dick starts having a factory of Powerpuff clones being made. Then the girls malfunction and fall apart and they get hard to put together as Dick ends up getting more money from sales. After pitching the Powerpuff Girls Extreme with an infomercial, the girls watch it and end up meeting Dick to straighten things out with him. Dick ends up swallowing the chemical X and becomes a superpower monster when the professor visits and sees his buddy using the machine to suck the life of the Powerpuff Girls, and the professor's love for the girls makes the Powerpuff Girls Extreme clones turn against his buddy Dick to save the professor and the girls. This episode proves that greed can really make someone turn bad, especially when people have certain ideas. Going under Get Back JoJo. The Powerpuff Girls wake up to a new neighbor moving in next door. This turns out to be a little girl named Robin who is around the same age as them. The girls take the new neighbor on a tour of the house and show her their room. After that, they spend a lot of time together doing many things, and this is so wholesome just watching these scenes in this episode. This is when the mayor has to give out a signal because the girls aren't able to answer their phone due to them being too busy hanging out with her. The girls get really busy fighting crime, and it's sad for Robin because she can't hang out with her new neighbors that often. A lot of times she has to spend alone since the girls never have any time off. When they're walking to school, they run into a spoiled rich girl, Princess Morebugs, offering them to be a Powerpuff Girl as her limo passes by. This is when she manipulates Robin to be her friend just because she is rich. The princess decides to have Robin get back at the girls by going into a convenience store and shoplifting when she ties up Robin and being a fake friend by trying to make Robin look bad. This is when the girls apologize to Robin, and the professor tells the mayor that the girls are busy when he wants his pickles open. This episode is very wholesome but has a big twist. Going under members only. Season 4 was one of, if not the best season ever, with most if not all of the episodes being great. Now we move on to Season 5 and Season 6, which are considered to be the worst seasons of the show. Now let's see about that, shall we? The Powerpuff Girls are given an idea to have their teacher, Miss Keene, hook up with their father, the professor. The girls send them letters to make it look like someone is sending each other letters to go on a blind date as a secret admirer. They both meet up at a pizza place, which is when they notice the girls spying on them. This is when they realize neither one of them sent love notes to each other. Professor Utonium and Miss Keene then feel some attraction to each other and spend way too much time for themselves and talking to each other, which really puts a strain on the girls' relationship with their father and their teacher, especially with them in a relationship. When the mayor tries to call the girls, he has no choice but to listen to the conversation that's on the other line, and he waits for a time to be able to talk because he doesn't want to interrupt them. This goes on for a long time as things get bad for the town and both of them don't pay attention to what they're doing, until the mayor finally gets a chance to talk to them, and later talk with the professor after he and Miss Keene officially break up over the phone. This is when the girls can finally do their duties. Despite Valentine's Day being one of my least favorite days of the year, this episode is alright. I do like the chemistry between the girls' father and their teacher, but they are better off as friends. So far, this episode is going at the top of the list. Mojo Jojo is attacking the town with the help of his robots, and Blossom has no idea of a plan to stop the attack, so Buttercup ends up stopping the attack for the team. Because of things not going so well for Blossom, she runs away from home. Mojo Jojo takes Professor hostage and calls up Blossom at her job to get her to help her sisters and her father. When Blossom comes over, she comes up with a plan to take down Mojo Jojo by sneak attacking him and saving the others. This episode proves that the Powerpuff Girls are nothing without their leader, but there wasn't much to say about this episode. Going at the bottom of the list. A monster attacks the town, but that's nothing that the Powerpuff Girls can't do. They earn the key to the city for their hard work in saving the town. The girls go to bed having nightmares, so this is when the devil or him messes with their dreams. Blossom has a dream where she is in class and everyone turns against her in unison. Buttercup has a dream where she gets a glass of water and has a nightmare about bugs. Bubbles has a nightmare about all her dolls scaring her. The dreams they have are really freaky, as they are all about the fears they have from either recent events or worry about upcoming ones. This is when Blossom shows off how smart she really is, when knowing the questions, and then escapes to save Buttercup from her nightmare by having her fight against the bugs, and then Blossom saves Bubbles by letting her know that her dreams are not real, so she has to fight back. This is when they all come together to stop him from causing their nightmares in the first place. After that, they wake up from that nightmare to see the professor in their bed after having his own nightmare. This episode is great because it shows how the girls get out of a bad situation, and it won't be the only great episode of Season 5. Going at the top of the list, right above Keen on Keen. This episode starts off with a chicken in the middle of town when the Powerpuff Girls beat him up until the chicken asks them to stop. This is when they find out all the monsters have been evicted from their own island as the mayor wants to build something on that island since he found a deed for that island. The townspeople at first do not like the fact that monsters are living in town until the girls convince them that they can live together. This is when on some occasions conflict erupts in town and the people are tired of living with monsters. After that, the monsters move back to the island and have the mayor sign a new deed, and they destroy their factory and take back the island. This episode is okay. I tried a new idea, but ended up falling flat. Going above Not So Awesome Blossom. The Powerpuff Girls have to babysit the talking dog, who just so happens to be a victim of a crime. It takes a lot of time spent with the dog in order for the dog to talk about what happened, such as having a meal or time spent in bed. The girls spend long nights listening to the talking dog trying to explain about what crime has happened to no avail. Even when the mayor and Miss Bellum visit the house, the talking dog still doesn't have much to say except for compliments. After a few nights of the dog sleep talking in his dreams, the girls finally find out the clues to solve the problem. Turns out the so-called crime happens to be a bag of meat bones that are meant to be thrown over the river.
You see, the Staglione brothers were trying to secretly dispose of all the leftover rib bones from the bistro. Isn't that right, boys?
That's right. They are beef bones. From our legitimate restaurant business, yes.
The episode is original, but it felt more like a lighthearted comedic take compared to most episodes relating to crime. Going under Monstrous City. The mayor goes to see Professor Utonium and makes him fix the toaster because the toaster is not working. This is when he keeps messing around with certain things in the lab and then messes with the Chemical X, growing taller as a result. The mayor then starts a rampage around town, not knowing he is scaring the townspeople. The mayor continues to throw a tantrum, refusing to do any orders. A crazy scene referencing King Kong happens as the mayor climbs a building with Miss Bellum with him. This is when the professor finally fixes his toaster. The girls give him the toast with secret antidote X jelly and milk, and the mayor shrinks back down to size. This episode had some promising parts, especially with the references, but it got ruined by the mayor's attitude. Going at the bottom of the list. The Amoeba Boys argue over who gets to steal an orange when an orange falls off a truck that passes by. So now they have to decide who gets the parts of the orange. This is when we see the Powerpuff Girls in class learning math and Buttercup asking some obvious questions. Some people may be thinking like,
what idiot doesn't know how to count?
Which is where we find the Amoeba Boys struggling on. This is until a fight peels orange and it cuts into slices. This is when the Amoeba Boys learn how to multiply by making clones of themselves. When the girls face off against the Amoeba Boys, they put their math skills to the test by using them to lower the amount of clones and take down an army of amoebas. This episode is actually great when they both face off, but it's not the worst episode so far. Going above, shut the pup up. The Powerpuff Girls are ready to go to bed when the professor ends up falling asleep, so the girls end up tucking him into bed before they go to bed. Until someone ends up breaking into the girl's house, and Bubbles is oblivious to what's going on, even when the burglar gives her the milk. So then Blossom probably thinks the burglar is lost or confused. When they confront the burglar, he ends up taking them back to their room without wanting to hear what they say. After that, they scare the crap out of the burglar until he gets back into a corner. This is when the girls encounter the burglar with the professor, and the professor punches the guy in the face while he is sleeping, and the girls kick the burglar out. This episode is like a nod to classic slapstick cartoon comedy with plenty of action, and it's one of the few great episodes of this season. Going above Keen on Keen. The professor is studying the villains of Townsville and where they originated from, to which the professor then chooses to study Fuzzy Lumpkin's home out of curiosity because he is the most interesting villain out of all of them. He then goes to the area in which Fuzzy lives at and films the activities he does to help with his studies, until the professor gets noticed and runs away from Fuzzy when he ends up getting stuck and going straight back to Fuzzy's house. This is when Fuzzy mistakes the professor for a woman, since the professor ended up getting into a mess and decides to get married. The girls end up coming over and go everywhere looking for the professor in the woods. Once they find the professor, Fuzzy ends up in love with a piece of dirt and the girls take their father back home. This episode started off well but became quite weird. Going above, Toast of the Town. Mojo Jojo is shopping at a hardware store for supplies when the girls beat him up over wanting to destroy the town. When that happens, a group of hippie protesters defend Mojo Jojo since he is a monkey, and they say the girls are demonstrating animal cruelty, which doesn't make sense. The girls try to explain themselves that Mojo Jojo is not a friendly animal, but the protesters aren't buying it. Mojo Jojo then ends up asking for sympathy, which somehow works. Mojo Jojo then uses the protesters as a way to get away with his actions and uses the fact that he is a monkey as an excuse to get away with being a villain. Despite what happens, the girls can't do anything about it because of the protest. It's ridiculous how Mojo Jojo keeps getting away with his actions and the protesters and the girls keep arguing over it. The girls then meet up with the mayor and they find out that the law only protects any living animals in the wild, so then they take Mojo Jojo to the wild where he is safe and can do no harm. This episode is way ahead of its time, considering protests like these by animal rights activists became more common over 10 to 20 years after this episode was made. Going under, Shotgun Wedding. The Powerpuff Girls and the rest of the class are excited to see their teacher when a substitute comes in. The girls are suspicious of the substitute and wonder what happened to Miss Keene. Buttercup and Bubbles think the cookies are poisoned, so they destroy them, when really they weren't that bad, so they have to stay inside for recess. The girls still have thoughts that the teacher's evil, and we have cool manga-like art style of these scenarios. The girls try to fight back against the substitute when the other kids tell them he is not that bad and he is nice. This episode proves that you shouldn't judge people because they are different. I like how they use a different art style in this episode. Going under, Burglar Alarmed. The Powerpuff Girls are always victorious in everything they do, so much that it makes a certain villain himself mad. This gives an idea, knowing the girls' reputation as superheroes. After the girls get done fighting a monster, they get surprised to see a certain group of villains are back. That's right, the Rowdy Rough Boys are back and better than ever. They fight each other in a one-on-one and the boys always outsmart them. The girls then try kissing the boys like they did in the original episode, but they don't blow up. Instead, they grow taller. The devil himself comes in and explains why the Rowdy Rough Boys are not going to go away anytime soon. Now the girls are feeling powerless against the boys. This is when the leader of the Rowdy Rough Boys, Brick, peels off a scab and throws it onto a stop sign. Bush then spits and Boomer ends up catching it with his mouth and then makes a bigger spit. This is probably some of the grossest stuff I've seen in an episode, other than the previous episodes that might have had some gross stuff or similar stuff. The Rowdy Rough Boys then beat up the girls to the point where they are playing games with the girls as the targets. This is when the girls get sick and tired of what's happening to the point where they have to come up with an idea to defeat them. But not before the boys have one final game. During the final game, the boys end up torturing Blossom and Bubbles so much that Buttercup figures out a way to give the boys pain. This is when Blossom has an idea to defeat the boys.
Do you see that? Whenever their masculinity is threatened, they shrink in size.
The boys end up shrinking down to size and the episode ends. This is a great episode and the best episode of this season. It's good to see my favorite villains of the show come back, especially since you know where my name comes from. That's right, the leader of the Rowdy Rough Boys. Going at the top of the list. The Powerpuff Girls wake up one morning to find their bed all wet, but they aren't sure what happened. The girls come up with ideas on what they think might have caused the problem. Even fighting monsters becomes a struggle as they still aren't sure who caused it. The next day, the wet bed problem only gets worse and the girls still argue. This is when the girls are in class and start thinking to themselves about what happened. They start talking to others about their problems and became aware of things in the environment around them. After trying to figure out factors and what caused the bed to be wet, the girls go to bed and stay up to find out what happened. That's right, Mojo Jojo poured water and wet the girls' bed the whole time. This is an episode that focuses on different aspects but with a lot of repetition. Going under, shut the pop up. Princess Morbooks is stuck in traffic when a fight breaks loose. It turns out to be the Rowdy Rough Boys, which crash into their car. This is when the princess gets out her superhero stuff and wants to join the Rowdy Rough Boys by teaming up, but she gets rejected. Princess vents her frustration to the girls on how the boys rejected her, and for the only time, the girls and Princess team up. The girls get the boys' attention by using gadgets the princess found in her storage, and the boys take over and have a good time. This episode is fine at best, but it's cool that we get to see the Rowdy Rough Boys again. Going under, divide and conquer. This episode begins in a prehistoric Townsville. A caveman ends up stealing a bag from someone that looks like the mayor, and the prehistoric Powerpuff Girls try to take the guy down, but they aren't able to. The guy and his elephant then drown in icy water and get stuck there. This is where we find the girls' class on a field trip to the museum. During the overnight shift, the security guard mistakes the exhibit for a thermostat and unfreezes the caveman and the elephant, bringing them back to life. The caveman steals the mayor's seeds. And we then go over to the school where the girls get a call from the mayor about sunflower seeds being stolen. The girls don't think it's a big deal, but the caveman always steals the mayor's sunflower seeds time and time again. The mayor then runs around the town to try and get away from the caveman. The girls freeze the caveman, and that's the episode. This episode is cool because it shows the Powerpuff Girls in a Flintstones-like setting, and the caveman still goes on a wild goose chase with the mayor because he looks similar to someone else that's just like him. Going above, shotgun wedding. The Powerpuff Girls are spending the day at the house cleaning their closet. This is when they reminisce on moments from past episodes, such as the time where Buttercup had her blanket. They also remember when the whole town was turned to dogs, and when Mojo Jojo did it again. There was a time when Professor Utonium turned the girls into little babies, and everyone in town also got turned into babies. Even Mojo Jojo took the girls' powers at one point. There's a sequence from this episode where the girls are teenagers and hang out at a mall and meet up with the Rowdy Rough Boys, but they get so distracted that the town gets attacked. The professor pops in and wants to talk about things he remembered. He and the girls go over that one time the professor almost got married, but it wasn't to a woman. It was actually Mojo Jojo pretending to be Miss Bellum. This is when the mayor comes in and remembers stuff he thought had happened, but never happened. This is when other people come in and ends with the girls chit-chatting with the professor about what happened. This episode is cool, but also strange because we see clips from past episodes and even some parts that never made it into episodes. Going under, the boys are back in town. This episode starts with breakfast as the girls have to eat liver and onions for breakfast while the professor has pancakes. The professor lies about being busy when really he wants to watch a quiz show, which is where the white lie pops up. The girls are not very amused to eat liver and onions, so Bubbles calls some dogs out to feed them the meal. The white lie only grows bigger from here on out as the girls continue lying. After the white light goes around breaking things around the house, the girls come clean and tell the truth about their actions to each other and later to the professor. After they work together to get rid of the white lie, it finally goes away. This episode's just a random idea at best, since the girls didn't have any superhero things to do, which is very rare for the show, as it's only one of a few episodes, especially in this season and others where that happens. Going under, toast to the town. The Rowdy Rough Boys are going around town doing their own shenanigans. At the request of Brick, Boomer steals candy from a kid, and that's when he encounters the Powerpuff Girls. They then lock Boomer up in the basement, and Bubbles steals his clothes so that she can pretend to be Boomer. The other boys come up with plans to do minor crimes and pranks around the town, such as graffiti and spitting, until Brick lets Bubbles, dressed up as Boomer, eat a cockroach. This is when they come back to the house, and Bubbles demonstrates her spit, and Boomer leaves with the rest of the boys getting freed, but without clothes on. This episode is cool because Bubbles goes undercover as Boomer and we get to see the Rowdy Rough Boys more often. Going under, City of Clipsville. A filmmaker is on a mission to get to know the Powerpuff Girls and what they do in their lives, including their hobbies and what they like doing outside of crime fighting. First, he goes up to the house to have an interview with the girls, but when he knocks, the girls leave to go do their business. After that, he goes downtown to see what's going on, but the girls quickly fight off the monster and fly away. Then the host interviews their teacher, and she explains what happens while the girls are in school, but she knows nothing about them outside of school. There are even interviews with the garbage man and a police officer until the host decides to try and talk with the mayor and his assistant. Unfortunately, they are not interested considering the interview wasn't scheduled. After not being able to conduct interviews with the villains, the host goes back to the police officer to see about getting a better view of the girls fighting a battle. Unfortunately, the girls already left when they were able to get there. The filmmaker almost gives up until he captures Mojo Jojo robbing a jewelry store, then fighting with the girls. This is when the girls save the man from being taken away by Mojo Jojo, and the episode ends. This episode is great because it gives a brief synopsis on the show, and Brian's documentary tells the story as best as he could get. Going above, City of Clipsville. This episode starts with two parents having to talk with the professor about there being a so-called influence on children because of the Powerpuff Girls. The parents tell the professor to have the girls stop using their powers as a result of a petition signed by all the parents of the town. This is when the girls have to call 911 to stop a carjacking, and the police aren't doing anything to stop it. This proves that the girls are useless without their superpowers. Crime is skyrocketing around Townsville as a result. The Dukes of Doom wreak havoc amongst Townsville, and this makes the girls go to the practices home, and after the girls try their best to convince them, and when the Dukes of Doom terrorize the house, they finally let the girls use their superpowers, making the legal contract void. This episode is a satire of overprotective parents and those parent groups, and the damage they could do at best. Going above, lying around the house. This episode starts as a musical where the villains of Townsville sing about wreaking havoc on the whole town. This is when the Powerpuff Girls come in with their own musical number, beating up the villains, but they end up getting outnumbered, leading into a sad song. The girls wish for good things to happen to them in the world, which leads to their voices being answered. A gnome pops up and promises to fix the town, but only if the girls give him their powers. The girls decide to do this, knowing they can be normal little girls finally. The gnome uses his magic to fix the town, but only at one price, taking away the girls' powers. The townspeople are finally seeing hope that things are finally bright thanks to the gnome. Because of the people being sheep for the gnome, the professor warns the girls about the bad things going on. This inspires the girls to confront the gnome. The girls scare the gnome by warning him about what he did to the town, taking away the girls, just a rule against the town, and the girls fight back by pushing him off the cliff, and things go back to normal. This is a great episode despite it being a musical number because it shows the differences between good and evil and how things could go wrong when things go differently. Going under, a documentary. The professor is trying to cook something in the kitchen. This makes the girls decide if they should check to see if dinner is ready. So when Bubbles loses rock, paper, scissors, she goes downstairs to check. The professor swears after burning his hand on the pot handle, and Bubbles comes back with nothing to say. Bubbles then starts coloring, and she gets upset when her crayon breaks, so she says a word she learned from the professor. The other girls find out about it, and they love saying the swear word they learned. The girls are in class receiving a grade on their paper, and Buttercup swears in class, causing them to be put in timeout. Then they go see the mayor where he asks them for help with the pickle jar, and the girls cuss him out. After the girls save the day many times, without realizing they are saying it as they are swearing at people to express themselves, the girls find the toilet with the potty mouth going on a rampage around the town. The girls argue with the toilet monster until the professor sees what is going on. He then talks with the girls on why they shouldn't use that word, and finally the girls take down the toilet monster for using those words. This episode proves that when you're a kid, you shouldn't be using swear words around people when you are very young, especially to insult people, so this episode gives out a good message to kids. Going under, Bubble Boy. Mojo Jojo is having a yard sale where everything must go. The girls in the Gang Green Gang are also checking out the yard sale as well. The girls fired the Gang Green Gang to be able to get a weapon for Mojo Jojo so the Gang Green Gang doesn't get it. The girls do tasks to earn the money while the gangsters just steal it from them. After trying everything to get the money, the girls ask their father, the professor, for some money to buy the Destruct away. So then they have to do a list of chores for the professor. The Gang Green Gang turns out to come short of enough money needed to buy the Destruct away because Big Billy bought a teddy bear. The girls were going to buy it, but instead the mayor ended up buying it. The mayor then proved the ray can make snow cones. After that, the girls sell the Gang Green Gang for 25 cents. This episode is alright, not the worst episode, but it also proves this season is not afraid to experiment with different ideas for this show. Going under, see no evil. Everyone wants to go see the newest movie at the theater, while the professor decides to take the girls to the silent theater to see a silent movie. The professor wants to teach the girls where movies came from as a learning experience. The girls watch a silent film about a villain who has someone taken hostage. After the girls tease the main character, they find out the professor is being trapped in the film and the girls have to rescue the guy. Once the girls find their way into the film, they have to find a way to rescue the professor but without the superpowers. They call the police to chase the bandit and the professor, and during the chase, there's reference to the actor Charlie Chaplin, which is cool. They get on a plane, and the girls and the police hang on tight until they get to Africa, and a gorilla takes over the plane. This is when Bubbles tears the film reel and the movie ends. The girls meet up with the actor in the projection booth and find out that he used to play in the silent movies. The girls decide to offer the actor a role in a color picture playing as the professor, and that's where the episode ends. This episode is a cool nod to silent films, but the episode didn't have much of a plot. Going under, substitute creature. The usual crime that always happens is foiled by the Powerpuff Girls. That is, until the girls find a peculiar group of villains robbing the bank. Because of how cute they are, they get away with their crimes and the girls get frowned upon for trying to stop it. Buttercup is shamed upon for confronting them because the townspeople think it's animal abuse, when really it's not. The people are brainwashed by the animals into letting them get away with it, unfortunately. Each time they rob a certain place, they always use their cuteness to get away with it. This is when the girls decide to take the Fluffy Bunch to the mayor, and even he is overwhelmed by their cuteness that he decides to give them a pardon for the crimes they do. The girls feel powerless as the Fluffy Bunch always gets away with committing crimes, and the girls are shamed for animal cruelty for going after them. Finally, the girls decide to set up a trap for the Fluffy Bunch animal group. That's right, the girls have their entire kindergarten class go after them by designing the school as a bank to let them think they will rob a bank when that isn't the case. They get overwhelmed by all the kids to the point where it helps stop them in their tracks. This was a good episode because it shows that even when the girls can't be able to do their job, they always find a way. Going above, boy toys. Here we have the Christmas special of the Powerpuff Girls. This special starts with the girls, specifically Bubbles, getting ready for winter break, and she is very excited for Christmas. Princess Morbucks pops in, talking about the one thing she wants to be. She wants to be a Powerpuff Girl. The girls tell her it's not happening, knowing all the bad stuff she does and that she is naughty. The princess couldn't believe she is naughty, and she asks her family and others if she is naughty, but they are too scared to answer her question. So the princess takes a flight to the North Pole to go to Santa's workshop. While that happens, the girls are getting ready for Christmas, and everything is almost great until the professor tries to plug in the tree, but it doesn't fully work yet. Once the princess makes it to Santa's workshop, she decides to alter Santa's list by making everyone naughty while making her nice and leaves like a bandit. This is when Bubbles wakes up to see coal in their stockings and everyone else having coal too. The other girls then wake up to see the bottom of this, so they decide to go to the North Pole themselves. That's when they meet the princess, who of course gets what she wants. So they travel to the North Pole and fight the princess on the way there before they confront Santa. That's when Santa realizes how good the girls are, and he realizes how rude Princess Morbucks is, to the point where he fixes the list to put the princess on the permanent naughty list. While he does that, the princess tries to flee, but Santa decides to take away her superpowers as a result of this. Unfortunately, things go horribly wrong and Santa himself can't fix the problem he caused. This is when he gets the Powerpuff Girls to help do the job for Santa and things go really well. Everything is fixed and all is happy in the end and the princess gets what she deserves. This is a really great Christmas special and I thought I would include this special because it aired during this season. Going under, the boys are back in town. Season 5 had some ups and downs, but it wasn't as bad of a season for the first season of the show without the creator, Craig McCracken, involved. There were plenty of good episodes in Season 5, such as the Rowdy Rough Boys episodes and the Christmas special, for example. Season 6 is going to be even more tough to handle as there are very forgettable episodes, but we will end the season and the series as a whole with the Powerpuff Girls Rule and Dance Pants. Let's see what the last season has in store. Mojo Jojo gets awakened from his sleep and tied up when a monkey tells the story of one from the movie who is the most dangerous. One monkey was rejected out of all of them and it turns out to be named Mopey, the one who have awakened Mojo Jojo. Mojo Jojo works to build a ray gun when Mopey disrupts him, causing him to drop the isotope. Mopey then tries to help out, but ends up screwing things up. He wants to help, but Mojo Jojo ends up getting more angry and his ray gun gets destroyed. Finally, Mojo Jojo lets Mopey help him. That's when Mojo Jojo tries to set something up, but Mopey doesn't do anything, so Mojo Jojo kicks him out of his house. Mopey then ends up getting his hands on the Powerpuff Girls, but then he leaves Mojo Jojo to deal with them, and that is all. This episode wasn't all that great, as Mopey tries to be a sidekick to Mojo Jojo and does what he can't do in order to backfire on it. Going at the bottom of the list. The professor goes to the store to replace his windshield wipers on his car, but then buys a lot more things than what he needs. He then shows the girls his car by showing off the cool new features he put in, such as making it a tank, a flying car, and a talking robot. When the professor gets back home, he gets too tired to do anything, and the girls are upset he is not doing much for the girls like he used to. The girls try to put engine stop fluid in the professor's remodeled car, but that doesn't do anything. The car is trying to run over the girls, and the professor notices, so he goes back to taking care of the girls, which makes his talking car jealous. After a fight happens, the professor has an idea to replace the driver with the robot of himself. So that means he has no car. This episode is good because having a robotic car as the enemy of the house to take over, like the title of the episode suggests, was a much better touch than the previous robot episodes, but not as much. Going at the top of the list, right above Primates. Buttercup has been going way too hard on fighting the villains. This is when the girls go to a Chinese restaurant and they get their fortunes, and Buttercup gets offended by her fortune, which leads to a discussion about her temper. Buttercup then gets shown how bad Fuzzy Lumpkins got hurt and then flees to a mountain. A monk talks to Buttercup and she realizes how much she needs to change. The monk trains Buttercup in how she can overcome her feelings, also showing how to do tasks without rushing it. Mojo Jojo comes to confront the monk and sees that Buttercup is there, but she has calmed herself down to the point where she doesn't fight back, until finally she is allowed to fight Mojo Jojo and lets it all out. This episode proves how Buttercup is able to change her ways by relaxing herself. Going under, coup d'etat. The professor talks about the news that he is a speaker for a science event at the Townsville Convention Center when the girls answer the door. The professor has a telegram from his brother Eugene saying he is coming to town to visit. When the girls are at the train station, they mistake a red-headed monster for their uncle. The monster goes crazy for Taffy. The real uncle of the girls gets off the train, not being able to meet the girls because they left with a similar-looking monster. They take the monster to school when another kid presents Taffy, and the monster comes up to snatch them. The girl's uncle Eugene is sitting at the train station, confused as to why the girls and his brother, the professor, are not there. The monster then goes to a taffy fair to consume all the taffy there is. The girls then take the monster home, still believing it's their uncle, and take him back to the train. Too bad the girls never got to meet their actual uncle, as he ended up going back onto the train. This episode is so bad to the point where it's kind of funny how the girls mistake a monster for their uncle. Going at the bottom of the list. The Powerpuff Girls are enjoying a nice day when they come home to a bad smell. Turns out Professor Utonium is cooking something for the Townsville chili cook-off. The girls try the chili and they don't like it. So then the girls and the professor add some drops of Chemical X to the chili. maybe a little too much. The professor's chili wins over the judges so much that the professor wins the cook-off. That is until everyone has a bad tummy ache from the chili and they pass gas. The gas ends up being very destructive to the whole town, so much so that there is an entire monster from it. It's so bad that the girls can't do anything about it, until Buttercup gets some nose plugs, which is very surprising considering we don't see any noses on the girls. It works for a little bit until everything else they try to do doesn't work out, but Blossom gets a match from the same place as Season 1, Episode 2, which might be said inside, since it was the same place from that episode where Blossom went to get that giant jar.
Wow, where did you get that giant match?
Same place I got the giant jar, silly. Episode 2, Season 1, remember?
The fire gets rid of the gas, and the professor gets disqualified because of that. This episode's okay at best, but at least it's something different despite being a bit recycled. Just not as bad as Uh-Oh Dynamo from Season 1. Going above, say Uncle. The Powerpuff Dynamo is back and ends up destroying the city. The girls try to figure out who is controlling the robot. No matter how much they try to stop it, the robot cannot be stopped. They either think it could be the Rowdy Rough Boys, Mojo Jojo, or the Gang Green Gang. As Buttercup tries to get the townspeople out of the city, the girls try every power they have. After the girls finally stop the dynamo, it turns out the mayor was in the robot trying to use it. Why would he want to use it? I have no idea, but all he does is press a button and the thing controls itself. This episode's just filler at best to bring back the dynamo so that the girls can fight it. Going under, wreaking havoc. Mojo Jojo is sentenced to community service by being a professor at Townsville Community College. As an English professor, all he does is talk down to the students. Mojo Jojo teaches them how to speak English in his dialect, which is giving out the definitions and explaining what the words mean. When this happens, everyone in town is confused and Mojo Jojo's students just take things way too literally and forcefully. They then suggest that the others go to Mojo Jojo's class. Now everyone is speaking in the dialect that Mojo Jojo is teaching, and the girls find out everyone is speaking in dictionary English or Molinglish. Finally, the girls go around town to fix it by having everyone talk normally and to the point, but they can't do it alone. So they have Mojo Jojo replaced by the talking dog as the professor to fix people's English. This episode's fine, it just gets a bit repetitive at times. Going above makes sense to me. The professor is trying to make lunch when he keeps slipping up in the kitchen. He accidentally makes sloppy joes when he was supposed to be making hamburgers. This makes Professor Utonium realize that his best inventions were made by accident. So he works hard to create his best invention on purpose, but he realizes it never works on purpose. By then, the professor daydreams his lab, and in the dream, he creates the girls in a more normal fashion, which are the run-of-the-mill girls. This shows how boring the cartoon would have been if the Powerpuff Girls were normal. Obviously, it feels like a boring real-life sitcom or a reality show. When they don't have superpowers, they can't fly, and they don't have good strength. The mayor even butt dials the girls on accident, thinking this is the Powerpuff Girls, which really is canon as it breaks the fourth wall. Finally, the professor falls asleep at his job and wakes up from his dream to the girls, happy that the girls are the way they are and that he is grateful they are not any other girls. This episode shows what the girls in the professor's lives would be like if they were normal girls. Going at the top of the list. A new villain is coming to Townsville and is changing posters, statues, and billboards by adding makeup. This turns out to be Mascara, a villain who used to be a fashion mogul named Madam M. She had marketed a trashy look until the dull look took over and ruined the empire. Now she wants her revenge on Townsville, and the girls have to get to the bottom of this. Buttercup ends up getting a makeover, but the trashy makeup look can't come off no matter what happens. As Mascara takes over the whole town with her makeup, the girls have to figure out a way to stop it while the professor makes the antidote. While Professor Utonium works on something, Blossom figures out a way to stop Mascara, but not without them revealing a mural in town before she comes. She wanted more coverage throughout the whole town, so finally the girls went after her. Blossom takes advantage of not gaining makeup to be able to help her sisters beat her. They almost lose until the professor has a solution, which is cold cream. This helps beat Mascara by getting rid of all the makeup around town once it hits her. Only then does Blossom mess herself up at the end. This is one of the few times having a new villain really works for this season so far. Going under, oops, I did it again. The professor is making cakes, and Bubbles overhears what he is saying and is thinking the professor wants to get rid of them. So Bubbles tells the other girls, and they overhear what the professor is saying. Now the girls have to prove that they are perfect girls. Bubbles shows Professor Utonium a picture of them. Buttercup shows off her fighting moves, and Blossom speaks Cantonese. The girls try to figure out what to do when even their teacher calls. After the professor gets home, the girls force their father to relax, and the professor is not having it. The girls think the professor will get rid of them by thinking of all the ways the professor would get rid of them. Finally, the girls blow up the lab and find out that the girls' peers are throwing a party. This episode is a poor attempt at drama and shock value, especially when the girls misunderstand the whole situation. Going under primates. The mayor is having trouble sleeping at night, so he goes over to the Powerpuff Girls' house for help. Turns out he has a nightmare about himself and the girls. Professor Utonium finds a way to help the mayor by having the girls and the mayor connected to a dream machine to help the mayor out. In the mayor's dream, the girls are sitting on a couch headed for Townsville Hall, where it's nothing but a pickle exhibit since the mayor loves pickles. In this dream, the mayor is very tall and is in a town made out of pickles. The mayor gives them a tour around town where everyone has the same face as the mayor. The mayor himself stops a bank robbery by beating up the bank robbers. Now the girls find out the cause of the nightmare. A pickle monster shows up. The girls help the mayor fight the pickle monster. Finally, the pickle monster gets put in the jar. But the mayor is sad because actually he wasn't able to give the pickle monster a hug. He wanted to give the pickle monster a hug, actually. The mayor goes back to bed, and later on the girls have nightmares. This episode wasn't too great, as the mayor can really be pushy in this episode, for example. Going above, Little misinterprets. Mojo Jojo is in the park watching other fathers and their sons enjoy Father's Day in the park. This is when Mojo Jojo notices the Rowdy Rough Boys in the park and is shocked that they are now back to life. He tries to confront them when the devil appears. They then have an argument on who should have the boys. After that, Mojo Jojo instructs the boys on doing his evil schemes by having a weapon inside a TV camera shooting out a pickle for the mayor. The mayor chases the pickle around town. I guess this proves that for the mayor, pickles are irresistible if you couldn't tell beforehand in the series. The devil beats Mojo Jojo with the pickle blimp for the mayor by showing the boys how to trick the mayor. But not long after that, Mojo Jojo gets out a giant robot and the boys try to do something with the mayor when it crashes from a banana peel. Finally, the devil uses a harmonica to trick lab assistants into making the earth come closer to the sun using one of their devices, which makes Mojo Jojo and the devil argue again on who gets to have the Rowdy Rough Boys when they have had it, so they decide to go their own way. This episode is pretty cool because it shows how evil both villains are in training the Rowdy Rough Boys. Going above, a made-up story. A statue of the mayor is being put up in Townsville. Bubbles then eats a jelly sandwich that had a bee in it, and a buzz is heard from her. She then wakes up after being stung in the throat by a bee. Due to her condition, she can't talk for a week, so she has to write what she has to say on a chalkboard. Meanwhile, at night, a bunch of squirrels dig underneath the statue. They join forces to redesign the statue. The next day, the squirrels terrorize the town and wreak havoc. The problem is that Bubbles would communicate to the squirrels, but she can't talk because of her temporary condition. Bubbles uses her writing skills to let the squirrel mayor know about what's going on in town. This is when Bullet makes a return to control the frenzy. Everything gets figured out when they find out that the statue is built above a bunch of nuts underground, and the squirrels are trying to get them back, but they can't, so they evade town. The statue gets destroyed, so the squirrels end up getting their nuts back. A new statue is put up honoring Bubbles and Bullet for helping out. It was great to see Powerpuff Bullet the squirrel make a return in this episode. Going above, custody battle. The Powerpuff Girls are patrolling Townsville at night when the Gang Green Gang break into Townsville Hall. They steal a candy cane from the mayor's collection and give it to Sedusa so she can get revenge on the Powerpuff Girls for something they did to her in a previous episode from an earlier season. The girls investigate the situation, but there is no evidence since any of that would be wiped out. The Gang Green Gang then steal a necklace to give to Sedusa the next night. She then tells the Gang Green Gang to make sure the Powerpuff Girls see them and follow them for the next time they steal the last thing for her. Good thing for the gang, the girls know exactly the next place. The gang finally go to the museum to steal Cleopatra's tiara for Sedusa to go with the necklace and amulet, with the girls following behind them. Sedusa then grows into a giant woman with all the stolen stuff and gets her powers back. Now it's up to the girls to fight back against the plot of revenge. However, the girls have no match for her. That is until the girls work together using a blast to stop Sedusa and thwart her attempts at using her powers to her advantage. When that doesn't work, the gang explains what gives Sedusa the powers and says in order to defeat her, they have to take away the tiara. This will make everything else useless. That ends up working out as the gang rejects her and the girls take the stuff back. It's crazy how the gang would work with Sedusa and Sipping for her, but it ends up backfiring hard at the end. Going above coupe d'etat. An angry monster is attacking the city of Townsville. The Powerpuff Girls beat it up and save a baby from the monster. The girls have to look for the baby's mother but can't find the baby's mother. Unfortunately, no one knows who that baby's mother is. The girls have to change the baby's diaper and take care of it for the time being. Finally, the baby melts it, and it turns out the baby was the monster's baby all along. This episode is just weird at best, especially with the human baby turning into a monster baby. Going at the bottom of the list. The narrator gets kidnapped and replaced by Mojo Jojo, which means now he controls the story. The professor shows the girls a machine he found. Even the girls know something's a bit odd. The girls kick the professor and then they are forced to walk when it starts raining. They then steal diamonds and rob the bank and give the mayor a kick when he finds an action figure. The girls then drop off the bag of goodies at Mojo Jojo's house. After finding each other for a while, the girls find out Mojo Jojo's behind all this and they free the narrator. This episode's better than the last one. It's cool to see someone else as the narrator experimenting. Going above makes sense to me. The Powerpuff Girls are relaxing on the beach when a solar flare from the sun is coming right towards the beach. The girls deny sunscreen, saying sunscreen is for nerds, and they use their powers to destroy the solar flare. Unfortunately for them, they got sunburned because they refused to put on sunscreen. This is hard for the girls as having a sunburn makes things harder, and it's really hard to watch them be like this. Only when the girls fight off con artists does Professor Utonium bring out aloe vera, and it helps get rid of the sunburn that has been keeping them down. This episode proves that the sunscreen is important, and it is hard to watch the girls like that while suffering from sunburns. Going above, that's not my baby. The whole town comes together to visit a carnival, and the girls and their father, the professor, are eager to go. There is one person who is not very happy, and he lives in a castle. He has a plan to make everyone sad and make himself happy. The power is so high that everyone becomes sad, and they can't do their jobs. Bubbles wins the Happiest Citizen Award until Hilarious takes the award from her after losing so many times. Professor Utonium says the only way to stop the effects of the misery ray is to have a sense of humor. The girls go up there and try to tell jokes to make people laugh, but only then does Hal slip on a banana peel that Bubbles drew on the ground and he becomes sad and miserable again. This episode proves that laughter is the best medicine. Going under, Little misinterprets. This episode is set in Townsville in the Old West. Mojo the Kid rides his donkey into town and goes into a bank to rob it. Unfortunately, he needs to sign a slip, which sounds ridiculous for an Old West villain, so he decides to rob the next bank the next day. After he robs the bank, the people figure out what they need to do to stop what happens the next day. They decide to entrust the inventor for help. So the Old West professor makes his own recipe similar to what makes the girls, which are the Steamy Puff Girls. They run on coal to fly up into the air using their machines. Once the clock strikes noon, Mojo the Kid is on his way to town to rob the next bank. They have a showdown starting with a face-off. When Mojo the Kid tries shooting his banana gun, the girls fly all over the place until they run out of power, but after starting back up again, Mojo's backed into a corner. He then gets beat up by the girls' machine powers until they end up falling back down again. The professor ends up fixing the girls' machines with duct tape. Finally, Mojo gets thrown out of town and into jail. This is a great adaptation of the Old West Powerpuff style. Going under, Aspirations. Mojo Jojo gets tired of always failing to get the Powerpuff Girls. This is when Mojo Jojo finds out about the girls mobilizing themselves. Mojo Jojo gets ice cream and it melts, making him come up with an idea. With his weapon, he summons the girls using audio recordings of cries for help. Once the girls fall for the trap, they get mixed together. They have to figure out how to get out of their situation by having a plan. As Mojo Jojo destroys the town, the girls try whatever they can. It feels like they are trapped and can't get out. They decide to act as a team to try to get themselves out of being mixed up, to which they figure out a way to fly. Mojo's weapon doesn't aim, so the girls use a new power to defeat Mojo Jojo. Finally, the mayor pulls the fabric to get the girls separate. This episode is alright, but not Mojo Jojo's best plan. Going under, City of Frownsville. Pirates are sailing to get treasure near Townsville when they end up going through a blue light and disappearing. They end up going to the Powerpuff Girls' house to find treasure. They end up stealing Chemical X from Professor Utonium's basement, but it's not the right treasure. The parrot and the pirates drink Chemical X and get powers. The ship floats in the air with their powers. The pirates then kidnap Professor Utonium and ask him what he has done with the treasure. To which the professor doesn't know, but he finds out that he is talking to the pirates who disappeared a long time ago. The girls then fight off with the pirates in order to save the professor when the chemical reaction stops and the pirates lose their powers. The girls have to send them back to the time they came from by putting them back into the vortex. It's nice how some pirate lore got into the Powerpuff Girls. Going under, West in pieces. The girls do a lot of work keeping the town safe, so much that they need a vacation. So the girls and Professor Utonium go to the woods when they end up bumping into Fuzzy Lumpkins and his family. This is when they argue about whether the bayou is public or private property. The girls get awakened in the middle of the night by Fuzzy's nephews throwing rocks. The next day, the Lumpkins go for a swim and make the girls all dirty. The girls want to fight back, but no matter how many times they cause disturbance, the professor says no. The professor shows the girls a tree he planted when Fuzzy Lumpkins takes down the tree. At this point, he has had it with Fuzzy, so he beats him up. After that, they go look for their family members, which is where they find them hanging out going fishing. This ended up turning from a hostile to a heartwarming episode. Going above, Sunscream. Mojo Jojo builds a miniature Townsville so that he can test out what future plans he has next. He tries to pick up his minifigure when he destroys his replica of Townsville as a result. With that in mind, he figures out his next plan. He goes over to the girls and uses a machine to make the girls bigger in size. The girls laugh because they think they can crush Mojo Jojo easily. However, Mojo always gets away with it and the girls end up destroying the town in the process. The citizens are not happy with how things are going, so they go to Professor Utonium for help. The professor decides to fix the machine and reverse engineer it. Meanwhile, Mojo Jojo gets away with stealing from different places around town. The girls find Mojo Jojo on the train and get off to go to a jewelry store, and Professor Utonium is able to reverse the machine and shrink them down to size. This is more unique than Mojo Jojo's last experiment. Going above, City of Frownsville. A squirrel has gone mad and is destroying the town, but it turns out he is burning and needs help. Blossom uses her ice bread to put out the fire, and the squirrel is grateful. Buttercup is upset because she doesn't have any special powers. The girls have a contest to see who has the most special powers, but Bubbles and Blossom always beats Buttercup when it comes to special powers. Finally, Buttercup shows off one special thing no one else can do in this episode: curling her tongue. That's funny, because in real life I can do that. This episode is a cool showcase of the girls' talents and powers. Going under, what's the big idea? Kids at school are heading home just to watch some TV. The show they are watching is The Wondrous World of Whimsical Willie. A dark cloud is forming and causing one character to not be happy. Whimsical Willie asks for money to keep the characters happy. The mayor decides to give some of his money to Whimsical Willie when someone has already done that and stole the money. Turns out it was Bubbles who gave the money away to Whimsical Willie, but not before Blossom and Buttercup stop this from happening. They aren't buying the ad because it's just a TV show and a set, and asking for money was all a scam. All the characters are played by criminals, so with help from the others, Bubbles beats up all the cast. She then stops Willie from stealing money from the city. The mayor says you should always listen to what television says. Yeah, right. This episode proves you shouldn't believe everything you hear. Going under, Nightmare. Crime is very high in Townsville and can only be the work of one person. None other than Madame Argentina, who has a duck as a sidekick. 3 of the most wealthy people in Townsville got robbed by her. Madame Argentina does a psychic reading for the mayor, and she figures out that he has a dead relative. Fred the duck ends up stealing the key to the city. Both of them fled, which means the mayor is locked out of his town. The mayor had to wait 3 days to call the girls because his cell phone plan has free weekend minutes. The girls drew a dart out the window and ended up striking Madame Argentina at the exact spot it landed. Blossom finds a tarot card and suspects she and the other girls are dealing with the terrorists. The girls dress up together as a one-person disguise to meet the sidekick when the duck looks in the pocket to find Buttercup. They follow Madame Argentina and Fred to Voodoo Island where she buys voodoo dolls of the Powerpuff Girls. The girls are hurt really bad as a result. The girls have been freed from the trap and buy a voodoo doll of Fred the Duck. Madame Argentina falls into the trap and that's where the episode ends and everything's resolved. This episode is only good for the narration and voice cast. Going under, Primates. Professor Utonium is having a party at his house and ordered some food for the occasion. Buttercup doesn't like wearing a dress, and Bubbles is getting ready when she finds out her toy octopus, Octi, is gone and only the leg has been found. Bubbles has to figure out who could have done this to Octi. The suspects are Buttercup, Blossom, Miss Keen, and the mayor. But it's when octopus food is served that Bubbles has had enough and wants to know what happened to Octi. Mojo Jojo calls and demands 1,000 gallons of Chemical X or Octi dies. But that's when the professor admits he is responsible. He accidentally ran Octi over with the vacuum and tried to fix it and was missing a leg on the doll, and that's when he noticed Bubbles when trying to get it back, which was also earlier in the episode. The professor fixes Octi and Mojo Jojo gets what's coming to him. This was a crazy situation for an episode, but a great finale. Going above, West in pieces. Season 6 was the worst season with the least good episodes out of all the seasons. I would say Season 5 was much better, but not as good as the earlier seasons 1 to 4, which had fewer bad episodes than Seasons 5 and 6 combined. Now we move on to the specials, and this ranking video will be done. Mojo Jojo is destroying the city and gets defeated once again. The key to the world is arriving in Townsville, and whoever gets the key rules the world. The girls have to race against the villains to get it because the mayor lost the key. The girls save all the people who are affected by this race. After the villains go crazy looking for keys and have a race, the girls find the key in the mayor's office. After Mojo Jojo takes the key and brings world peace, the girls take the key back from Mojo Jojo. This is a great tribute special for the Powerpuff Girls. Going at the top of the specials list, there's only one more after this. This special presents the Powerpuff Girls in a new art style. A giant robot is kidnapping all the new characters and it's up to the girls to stop it. The girls free the hostages and they buy a new video game. They use it to finally defeat Mojo Jojo. This special is not that great as I remembered it. Going under the Powerpuff Girls rule. That was my entire ranking of the Powerpuff Girls original series from seasons 1 to 6, including the specials. I would like to say thank you so much for watching and your patience in watching this video, as I've already released this into parts before I put the whole video together right now, as it took about 3 years for me to finally finish this. And it was a lot of hard work to go through these episodes and rank all these episodes. But since I'm a fan of the original Powerpuff Girls show, I thought I'd be able to do this. And thank you so much for watching this video. Leave a comment and tell me what you think of my ranking, and check out my channel if you want. Anyways, this has been Brick, and I'm out.